afternoon. It's almost evening, but good afternoon to everybody. I hope everyone's having an awesome, wonderful day today. Um, so today we're gonna be pretty chill. I was a bit heated in the last stream, so I think we're gonna take it down a notch. I also have some slight allergies, so I have a little mouth breathing situation, so I'm gonna try and keep myself a little bit away from the mic so you don't hear it. Thank you! That is the vibe. Thank you, yes. That is the vibe I'm going for, the anime mom hair. I really like it. I cut it myself. I don't know. Is it? I don't think it is. I just did it because I like it. But it might be foreshadowing for my next video that I'm working on. Because I was recording that today with this same outfit. Nah, it's not that big of a deal. No, it's not any foreshadowing. I just really like this haircut. I really like the old 80s aesthetic. The old 80s to 90s anime aesthetic, and I thought, let me just give myself some bangs, you know? So, I'm gonna do a little recap of what we were talking about the other day, but before I do that, I have a guest with me today. Come here.
Come here. Stop it. Stop.
She doesn't want to be on camera right now.
Come on. What's your problem? Get up.
I don't know if you heard her, like, just going like, ah.
Oh, come on. Come here.
There she is. La vieja. La viejita. There you go. I'll leave you be. She just wants to sit behind me, so I squish her. Like, that's what she wants. She wants to be squished. There she is, yeah. So, I hope you got your popcorn, because this is going to be another... Why are you dying behind me? Relax. Just bless you. I hope you got your I got popcorn. And I got Snapple. That's the vibe today. So, I came prepared this time, because I did not realize that the stream yesterday was going to be so long. It was 3 hours. That's a long time. So, yeah. I'm just going to do a little recap of what we were talking about yesterday. Chill. Oh my god, this dog. She wants to get under the blanket. So, we were talking about In Praise of Shadows and his horrible, terrible videos. We went through partially his Hills Have Eyes video, and I gave my opinion about it, that I think it was a bad video for more than one reason. Mostly because his allegory to the cannibals was not the best. I understand where he's coming from, but it really, like, was a failed allegory. It didn't come across the way I think he wanted it to come across. So, I was a bit harsh on him yesterday, because honestly, watching his videos, like, for so long, kind of, like, pisses me off. Because just thinking about what he did later on in the video, it's like, always in the back of my mind, and I'm trying to separate myself from that, from, like, the video essay section, which is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about mainly that he just doesn't have good video essays recently. Like, it hasn't been good. Hold on. Like, his video essays just haven't been the way that they were before. And actually, I saw another one of his videos in my free time, and it's pretty good. Like, the one that Wendigoon watched, the Slenderman one, was actually a legitimately good video. I'm taking my watch off because it's kind of annoying me. Like, that was a legitimately good video. And another great video he has is In Defense of Nicolas Cage, which he mentions was, like, a great video that he had because it was a well done video. Like, that was a really well scripted, well thought out video. His other videos have not had the same quality, have not had that same touch as before. But I digress. We will start the thing. He was talking about AI where we left off. He was talking about how a little indie film used 3 AI photos and that people don't want to boycott the film because it has a limited budget, which to some point I understand, because when you have such a limited budget, it's hard to really, kind of trying to fix my chair. When you have a limited budget, you have to dedicate certain things. You have to like prioritize certain things, which makes it difficult. Like, okay, you want to pay artists their fair wages. You don't want to just, because he was saying you can just pay them $50 per thing like I did. Yeah, but it's a movie. The standard is slightly different, especially since as he mentioned, it's going to theaters. It's not the same as making a YouTube video. The standard is not the same. Because for movies, you have to do different iterations of the same photo with different colors and things like that. So you would need to hire that person either like on staff so they can keep doing that, or pay them multiple times for the project and pay them even more. Like, I know like $50 per piece is really cheap. That's a really cheap price for art, and that's kind of underpaying the work, honestly. Like, let's bring out calculator. Let's say it takes them 5 hours to complete one piece, right? That's $10 per hour. If they complete it in 5 hours. And art takes a long time, so $10, that's minimum wage, right? That's minimum wage. And it's like less than the common, because usually people get paid like $15 an hour normally. So it's a little bit less. So he's actually underpaying artists, right? And art is expensive. And so they used AI art. And this was before the conversation was so big. I'll have some popcorn. So let's just get into it.
Many others are all moderately left in their thought processes when approaching story and how they're concerned with social issues within their films. Now, not all of them are communist left, but still, the argument stands that they're all pretty left to be making mainstream successful movies within America. Mary Shelley was queer, Oscar Wilde was queer, Lovecraft was almost certainly queer, James Whale was queer, Bram Stoker was queer. The very foundations and grammar of the art were constructed by queer people, about queer people, and as an art form. It really only works when being used as a mirror to reflect social issues, about how people of lower class are being affected by those with power. Horror can't really function when it's being bent into a tool that punches down. It's why Saltburn fundamentally does not work as a film, where we find these fabulously rich people who were living their best lives, only to have their undoing befall upon them by the hands of a weird little queer freak who buries into their estate like a parasite. Horror is intrinsically designed to question authority and critique power, and does not—
It doesn't necessarily have to critique power, and it doesn't have to do anything with authority. It's horror as a genre is a form of analyzing the human psyche. That's what its main priority is. Like, think about it. What is horror used to invoke? Fear. And what is the main part of human emotion? Like, what is the main, what is it called? I guess motivation for humans? Fear. So that's why horror is a thing. It can be a way to talk about authority and a way to talk about power dynamics and things like that. That's a great format, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Some can, but you're kind of minimizing what horror can touch on. So I think that's why he's like limiting himself in his aspect, like in his view and in his critiques and analysis of horror. He's limiting himself like a lot, in my opinion. My humble, small little opinion.
Work to channel cruelty. The very act of creating horror fiction has for decades been an act of protest and critique. For more examples, watch practically any of my other videos. We don't have enough time for it here. It just is what it is. And from
No,
there,
it's not.
we're gonna move on.
It's not.
Folks
It is what
constantly
it
talk
is.
about the political undertones in my videos, but horror is an unabashedly political genre
No,
that
it's
is
not.
concerned directly with issues facing the current society.
No,
And
it's
if you're
not.
in the horror space and you don't regularly acknowledge this foundation as a challenge to power, then I just assume you're in it for the money.
It's not about money, dude. It can be for entertainment. You can have a good, entertaining horror movie. It doesn't have to delve into some deeper thing. It can if you want to. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But he's, like, forcing this political ideology. Whether you agree with his ideology or not is besides the point. Like, I'm, like, center, left, center. I don't know. I'm somewhere, like, I'm not, like, really, anything. I have a weird standing with my politics. I don't like to talk about it too much. Because I'll disagree with everybody. So, let's keep going. But it doesn't have to be political. No.
Or that you don't actually care, or you're just really bad at your job. And if that makes you uncomfortable or upset that I often do that in my videos, that's probably a good thing. This is the intended purpose of horror as a concept. It is designed to provoke, to question, to hold accountable, to...
Yes. I partially agree. Horror is made to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to bring out emotions in you that you're not necessarily used to. It's supposed to scare you. And fear is an uncomfortable emotion. And dealing with those emotions is hard. So yeah, it is uncomfortable, but not in the way that he's necessarily saying like, oh yeah, you have to think about it in the political lens, and because I'm talking about it politically, that makes you uncomfortable. It's not that you talking about it politically makes us uncomfortable. It's just that it's not the common way to read horror films. Like, there's horror films out there that have no politics, and they're great. Like, I'm not a big horror buff or nerd or whatever. I don't know a lot of movies with that, but my favorite horror movie, it is for kids, because I'm a little bit of a pussy when it comes to watching horror movies. I get very scared. I don't like I don't like being scared too much. And I have a very, like, large imagination, so watching horror movies kind of messes with me, and I think about it for way too long. But Coraline is a great horror, or, like, entry to horror films, and it's not political. I can promise you it's not political. At all.
read and facilitate conversation. It drives me crazy to see anti-intellectual stances from people within genre spaces who say, why can't a movie just be a movie? Why does everything have to have meaning or stand for something? Can't we just have fun anymore? The best horror is fun. It does both. Fun and smart are not mutually exclusive concepts to each other, and it has always been that way. And it is crucially important to acknowledge that and understand our history if you're going to then apply that history to the works of the art form in the world that we live in today. If you are far right and think that I'm...
Sometimes you have to take the context of the movie, right? So, hold on. Most of the time, movies will have deeper meanings just because it's a form of expressing yourself. And whether, like, the author intends it or not, people can grasp deeper meaning. Now, people can look at things in different ways, and that's perfectly fine. You can do that. I was watching this film, or this video, the Shrek 2 is a queer masterpiece. I disagree with his reading of it, and there's many ways that I don't, I think that he's reading it wrong. I don't think it's a queer masterpiece. I think it's I think it is a masterpiece, but I think it's more about class rather than, sexuality. But I'm not going to take away from his opinion and be like, okay, you're 100% wrong. But that's not the intent of the director. You have to take director intent, think about it while you're analyzing these things. And think about the time period that it was made, too. Like, that's really important. And I know that's kind of what he's saying, but he's only looking at it through his lens and his political lens, instead of thinking about it through other lens. Like, okay, if Mary Shelley was queer, you have to look at it through a queer lens, right? And you have to, like, you can pick up subtleties about these shared emotions within the queer community within Mary Shelley's work because she was queer. I don't know if she was or not, to be honest, but I think it's a good way of thinking about things, and I don't think he's taking author intent or artist intent. I say author because I mostly do literary analysis rather than movie. But let's just keep watching.
Wrong? Genuinely, your favorite horror filmmaker would not only hate the things that you stand for, but chances are they probably also made a movie about it. Now, on a surface
That's
level,
not true.
one could see horror as anti-women or pro-violence or, you know, kind of the things that I was accused of in the last chapter because of the nature of the art form. Which, yeah, all of that stuff exists. That's all out there. But I think if you're viewing the entire art form that way, that is a bit of a reductive and simplistic view of what
Bro, okay, hold on. Let's listen to what he just said again. Okay, let's go back. Let me see.
About it. Now, on a surface level, one could see horror as anti-women or pro-violence or, you know, kind of the things that I was accused of in the last chapter because of the nature of the art form. Which, yeah, all of that stuff exists. That's all out there. But I think if you're viewing...
So it is out there. Horror can have those themes. Right? Now we're both agreeing. It can have those themes, whether you like it or not. It's out there.
The entire art form that way. That is a bit of a reduction.
And what you're doing... Hello, Aspen! How are you? It's good to see you. We're doing part 2, baby. 2 days in a row. This is gonna be another 3-hour stream. I can feel it, because we're only halfway. And I have a lot to say. So, it's gonna be a long stream today. And I'm out of Snapple. What am I gonna do? Oh, man. I ran out of Snapple. I just have water. I'm great. I'm just looking at this guy and his silly thoughts and his silly analysis of things. Like I had like a really bad headache. I'm talking really bad. I think it's because I was looking at a screen for so long. Yeah! Time to legally... Does that mean that you can, like, give vaccines? Is that what that means? Because if so, I actually need help. I need to get the rabies vaccine, and I have no idea how to even, like, go about that. So, sorry I'm munching. I like, with vaccines, yeah. Congratulations. Congratulations. You got your rabies vaccine last week, or what? What did you get? The course, or I don't know. I feel like I'm lagged. Oh, yeah. I need to get tetanus and rabies. I need to get both. Because for vet school. It kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I'm gonna stop eating popcorn for now. So I'm getting distracted with the munching. Nice, okay. The Python pickup program. Damn, that sucks. You got called in for work before. Hold on, y'all. I'm gonna get a napkin real quick. Well, I hope you were able to do it because that's actually like really cool. The Python pickup program I've heard is pretty lit. Like you just go, literally just picking up Pythons and cleaning out the streets, of Pythons. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna drink some water and then get back into the video. I don't know why, but like I get really out of breath when I stream. I don't breathe enough. I get like maybe that's why I had a headache before. But okay, we're gonna continue watching. One thing I have to say, I think I was gonna say something.
Because of the nature of the art form, which, yeah, all of that stuff exists. That's all out there.
Since you got your new work, so yeah, you just have to find time for it, man. Hopefully you don't. I mean, you have to set your schedule. How are you gonna do anything if you don't have a set schedule? Anyways, let's continue.
But I think if you're viewing the entire art form that way, that is a bit of a reduction.
So this guy, he's saying if you view the entire horror genre as oh, it's violent and it's misogynist, that's kind of like reducing horror down to this. But that's what he's doing. He's basically reducing it, saying if you view it like this, you're wrong, and that's bad. But if you view it through the leftist political lens and the queer lens, you're right. That's basically contradicting himself. He's contradicted himself within like not even a minute of each other, like of his statements. So how can you can't have both? Horror is either all encompassing or it's not.
And simplistic view of what these films are typically actually trying to say about how we should all treat each other as people. We have to remember that depiction in art is not necessarily an endorsement of what is being shown. I mean, looking at Lloyd Kaufman movies on the surface, you would think that they were practically directed by a Klansman. But if you actually pay attention to him as a person and as an artist, and what he's trying to say and the types of people that he allows...
I agree. Sometimes when you're showing something, it's not necessarily like endorsing you. You're trying to put out a message. And I completely agree with that. Like that's 100% true. Like sometimes you want to show a message, and to show that message, you got to show things that you disagree with. And that's completely understandable. And I actually do agree with him on this point. That's a good point. Like you can't just not show things because it might make somebody uncomfortable. The point is like when you're showing somebody something that they disagree with, they're gonna be uncomfortable, and that starts a conversation of what can be done about it, or like what your thoughts are, expanding your worldview, things like that. So I do agree with him here.
On the screen, and also the people who are in his direct circle, then you do start to kind of realize that Troma has always been kind of one of the most radical and progressive, nearly anarchist film companies, operating at that level within American cinema. A group that revels in bad taste on a John Waters scale, but similar to him, does so not out of hate. At least, not hatred of common people. I mean, just listen to some of these quotes that he gave in an interview in New York back in 2001 with Roll Hannon on how Troma always approaches story as a company. We take the position that there is a conspiracy of elites, the labor elite, the bureaucratic elite, and the corporate elite. These three elites conspire to suck dry the little people of Tromaville of their economic and spiritual capital in the United States.
So I'm gonna skip a little bit because I don't know much about Troma. I don't know what he's referencing right now, so I'm just gonna skip a little bit. By the way, can you guys hear the audio okay? Just let me know if you can hear it. Like with my voice and then the other thing. So just let me know. Okay, we're gonna skip a little bit because I don't disagree with him. Like he's literally saying the author's intent in what he does, which is fine.
Yes, but not hateful. And there's a big distinction there, where hateful is the act of lashing out, undirected and uneducated, but anger is channeled positive energy.
Hold on. hold on. What? Let me go back a little, because that's...
the actual real work. Half the world is starving, and we're having discussions about abortion. It's horseshit. None of this sounds like the words of a hateful man to me. Angry, yes. but not hateful. And there's a big distinction there, where hateful is the act of lashing out, undirected and uneducated, but anger is channeled positive energy.
Hateful doesn't necessarily have to be uneducated. You can be educated about the situation and hate something. I would say, like, most people know what happened in the Holocaust. They say, like, oh man, I hate Hitler. They know what he did. That's not being uneducated. It's a strong emotion of dislike. That's what I think hatred is, and I think he's conflating it with some other things. I disagree with his definition of hateful. And anger is a primary anger is a secondary emotion, I think. There's like levels to emotions, and sometimes your primary emotions get hidden by secondary emotions. So sometimes you could feel a primary emotion, not know how to process that, and that can come out as anger. But there's a reasoning underneath the anger. And it could be positive, it could be negative. Like, you could be angry for negative reasons. I could be angry that I'm, I don't know, someone blocked my freaking car and I can't pass. Right? That's a negative emotion. That's road rage. Right? That's anger. So you have these negative emotions, right? But you also have positive anger. Like, oh my god, you killed my father. Or, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die. Like, that could be seen in somewhat of a positive anger. Like, okay, it's an understandable anger, rather said. Not a positive anger, but an understandable anger. You know where that anger comes from. But a negative anger is like, okay, I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know if that makes any sense. Oh my gosh. Snapples make me gassy. Damn. Oh, goodness. I don't want to burp in the mic. I know some people like that shit.
And you can feel that throughout Terra Firma, which is one of the most outwardly mask-off works of leftist horror filmmaking in the past 2 decades, which, if you've not seen it, you really should. And to view horror as hateful or overtly negative or simple-minded, I think fails to recognize what it can do as a form of expression, criticism, and protest. And what it has always been able to do for...
Horror can be hateful. It can be, right? You can have a hate towards an emotion or a type of people or anything, and that can come out in a movie like that. There are movies like that, which I can't name any. I don't watch that many horror movies, but I mean, maybe, like, let me see if I could think of something else. I don't know. Well, about the hateful / anger thing, let's take Tropic Thunder, a movie that I'm sure he would not agree with, or maybe he might. Maybe he'll surprise me and he does like Tropic Thunder. If you don't know what Tropic Thunder is, it's a comedy action movie. It's the only action movie I've ever seen that I liked. And it's very ironic. It's a satire on society. And you have Robert Downey Jr., who is this very white, blonde Australian guy. And he takes a role to become a black person. And so he goes through a surgery to change his, his skin tone, and he becomes black. He's not actually black, but he's pretending to be black. And then you have a real black man basically saying, yo, what the fuck is this shit? You're just making fun of my culture and you're appropriating it. You're not appreciating. You're not doing anything. This is fucked up. So you have these 2 levels of like, yeah, in some sense, like, it's not hateful to do blackface in that, because it's a what is it called? It's like a message against it. It's like, okay, here's the bad thing, here's the message against the bad thing within the same movie. So, like, I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying blackface is good, but I'm saying, like, okay, Robert Downey Jr. did blackface, and then within that same movie that he did blackface, he was being called out for doing it in character. Because his character was fucked up. You're not supposed to like that character. You're supposed to hate that guy. You're not supposed to like him. Or not hate, you're supposed to dislike him. So that's the point.
For those things. But when I talk about horror being left, what I actually mean is that It has historically been used as a tool most successfully by left filmmakers. Horror and film in general, like all forms of...
So it's not left. It's just that leftists tend to use it more. So it's not overtly a leftist medium.
art are merely tools that can be wielded by anyone to produce art and expression that can then be experienced by others. And often it is the case too that conservatives produce works of horror as well. It isn't something that only the left does. There's this
Then
dangerous
it's not
myth that has
leftist.
been cultivated by the left that conservatives can't make art, that they don't understand people on a very basic level, that they're not funny. Norm Macdonald was a staunch conservative. David Zucker, who made Airplane, is a Republican and has specifically made films for the Republican Party. John Hughes was a Republican and made Ferris Bueller's Day Off as a show of his idealization of what the freedoms of Reaganism could do for us all. Milos Forman, who made One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus, was staunchly anti-communist. Sam Raimi, the director of the Evil Dead films and the Spider-Man films, is a Republican who donated to both George W. Bush campaigns and has been alleged to support Trump very much in private, but just doesn't talk about it because he knows that people wouldn't like it. Quentin Tarantino is a Zionist and lives in Israel. Roy Frumkus, who wrote the film Street Trash, has been accused of sexual harassment directed at his students for decades. I mean, hell. David Lynch said at one point, Trump could go down as one of the greatest presidents in history. A statement that he would later retract, but arguably as much as I love him, a great deal of his work does have some conservative values to them.
Okay.
Even though he clearly believes in the spiritual nature and
So
goodness
then-
inherent in the average human. Something that
So basically he spent a hot ass minute saying horror is innately leftist. Horror as a genre is for leftists. And leftists are the ones using it to show a message. And then now he's contradicting himself saying, yeah, there are. What is he going to say? It's bad? That's your, I guess that's your opinion.
famously argued
But,
once that people
oh,
really
by the
like.
way, it's been 1 hour and 23 minutes and we finally got to the topic of the title. It should have been two completely different things that he was talking about, honestly.
Trust me when I say that conservatives are perfectly capable, just like anyone else, of being funny and learning how to produce art. Those things are skills that anyone can do. To think otherwise would be hopeful at best, but in practice is dangerous, and allows the slow infiltration of conservative beliefs into places that they should not be allowed that anyone can do. To think otherwise would be hopeful at best, but in practice is dangerous, and allows the slow infiltration of conservative beliefs into places that they should not be allowed.
Conservative beliefs should not be allowed? Why? Why should conservative beliefs not be allowed? Because you think they're dangerous? How? How are they dangerous? You're like just saying, these people that think this way, and these people that I actually have enjoyed their content, they should not be allowed to do this. And also, why are you equating this one guy who sexually assaulted his students with all these other people who just have conservative or like more right-leaning beliefs? Like, is he Republican, whether he's Republican or not? It doesn't matter. Kevin Spacey was a Democrat. And he's queer. So, there's bad people on both sides. You didn't have to lump him in with this whole situation.
Because it creates this shield that allows us to ignore their red flags. The idea that conservatives cannot make good art needs to be abandoned, because it leaves us in a position to where we underestimate their potential to spread their messaging. I would argue that despite the face of horror journalism...
So he just wants to completely silence conservatives completely, which is not the way you should ever live your life. He basically saying, anybody who I do not agree with, I do not want them to speak. Which, you know what happens when you do that? Do you know what happens? You get Andrew Tate. And you get The Matrix. And you get all this shit. Because let me tell you guys something. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent right now. Look. When you try and silence people, people like Alex Jones, people like Andrew Tate, guess what? They become resentful and they start saying things like, I'm being silenced. I'm being, it makes their paranoia grow even more. And it kind of confirms that they're being silenced. So what do? You let them speak. And what happens when you let them speak? You hear their stupidity. Like, You can listen to Alex Jones and Andrew Tate and you're gonna hear that they're fucking insane. Right? Yeah, okay, some few people might be like, oh, you know what? I agree with him, but they would have like thought these things with or without them. That's the point. Like you would have had these opinions with or without these figureheads, right? It's not like crazy to think that, okay, it's not that I'm like fixing my hair because it's bothering me. But like it's not that specifically it's like, oh yeah, like, oh, it's these people like spreading their rhetoric. That's not how that works. They're not spreading their rhetoric. It's that they're finding people who already agree with them. They've already like made up their minds beforehand before they found these people. So you have these alpha male guys. They already agreed with Andrew Tate since the beginning. Like literally since day one, they didn't need any like changing of their minds or whatever. They were already there, and they're gonna exist anyways. So when you start silencing people, guess what? They're gonna get paranoid, and they're gonna be like, I was right, I was right, I was right. Look, I'm being silenced. And that's what you're trying to do. When you silence these people, it's just going to create more paranoia, and they're gonna get even louder and louder and louder. It's gonna have the opposite effect of what you want. When you have crazy people, you don't silence them, you let them speak. Which is why canceling people who are like Alex Jones, Andrew Tate, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, my point is silencing people you disagree with is stupid. And you should want to disagree with people. Because let's say you have someone who's like, he's like given a lot of center hate because they push conservative ideals. There's nothing wrong with conservative ideals inherently. What happens is that sometimes conservatives, they become ideologues. Same thing with you, my dude. You're becoming an ideologue. It's not the thought, like, it's not the thoughts themselves. It's not the themes of conservatism that are dangerous. What's dangerous is if you begin to cling to these ideals as if your life depends on it, as if it's your identity, which is what happens with you, my dude. I should stop saying my dude. Which is what happens with you, IPOS. What is his name? I don't know. Zane and all these other people like Ben Shapiro, they become ideologues. They think that this is the way, this is my identity. I am conservative. I am a progressive liberal. I am a communist. I am this. I am that. When you start putting labels on yourself like that and following everything that is being said, like, oh, if I'm a communist, I need to believe this, this, and this. If I'm conservative, I need to believe this, and this. If I'm Republican, I need to like Trump. If I'm Democrat, I need to like Joe Biden. That's not realistic. If you meet real people, most people disagree with the same people within their party. Democrats disagree with each other. Republicans disagree with each other. And they both disagree with everybody. Like, it's the whole thing is that you have disagreements. That's the whole point. If you do not disagree, look, I disagree with my family on a lot of points, and we get along. He believes, this guy Zane, believes that you cannot get along with anybody who you disagree with. And that's dangerous thinking. That's dangerous because I disagree with a lot of people and I am friends with them. Like, really good friends with them. So, just because, let's say, look, I don't like weed. I don't like smoking weed, right? Does that mean that if I have a friend who smokes weed, I'm just gonna drop them? No. They can do whatever the fuck they want. Like, personally, I don't like it. I'm not gonna stop them from doing it. It's their choice, unless, like, you know, it's their choice. I disagree with it. I'll tell them my point, like, hey, man, I think you're hurting yourself, or hey, friend, I think you're hurting yourself by smoking weed, or by smoking at all, so I think you should stop. I'm just gonna tell you that because I'm your friend and I care about you, right? But it's up to them. I'm not gonna drop their ass because I disagree with them. That's not how that works. You don't just drop your friends because you disagree with one thing that they said. If not, you're never gonna have any friends. Or you become this guy. And you go actually, like, insane. I'm gonna see if I can fix this thing. Whatever. I made this little sprout crochet thingy, and it's not standing up. I don't know why. I made it, and it's just falling down. Whatever. It is what it is.
And horror authors being more diverse than they ever have been. On the side of horror cinema, we are living through the past 20 years of being some of the most conservative in the history of the genre. And within horror cinematic fiction at large, this has been a gradual, slow creep, as there's always been some figures producing art within the medium, obviously, who hold right-wing beliefs. But more and more, I will sit down to watch a horror film and be blindsided by what it is actually trying to communicate to its audience. And I hate that more than just about anything when it comes to film. This myth that—
Oh my god, bro. What do you— okay, hold on. Let me let him finish his sentence for a second.
every movie that is ever made that is either horror or is a small independent production should be immune from basic criticism that we would level at any other work of media needs to be abandoned for this reason. We do not need to support—
Wait, what?
Is actually trying to communicate to its audience. And I hate that more than just about anything when it comes to film. This myth that every movie that is ever made—
Okay. So, you hate that when you go into a movie, you get blindsided by a political opinion you disagree with. So why do you think it's so crazy that people who disagree with your opinion or leftist opinion go into a movie theater and they disagree and they're blindsided and they're like, I just wanted a movie. I just wanted a movie that, like, I can sit down and enjoy, and now they're shoving this down my throat. And they're shoving conservative opinions down your throat when you watch this. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You're holding a double standard just because you think you're right.
that is either horror or is a small independent production should be immune from basic criticism that we would level at any other work of media needs to be abandoned for this reason. We do not need to support every single small movie. Horror people love to make fun of what—
You support it if you want. It's not like... the thing is, like, when you have indie films, because you know how much work goes into that, you want to support them even more. It's not about supporting every single indie film. It's about supporting the ones that you enjoy, that you think will do well, or that you want to see. And it's just harder to make those movies. So, I don't know.
view as basic lesser MCU fans, with their bizarre vanilla culture worship and their crusade against Martin Scorsese, but then will turn around and basically do the exact same thing themselves, just on a battlefield that is being fought on a smaller scale. A mindset of consume, 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 without even thinking to question how the sausage gets made, just lacking any sense of moral fiber in their bone.
What? Bro, sometimes, look, okay, I'm gonna give you an example. I think the Barbie movie is a great example of this. I would say socially, I'm like very mixed, but the whole like feminist rants, they kind of get on my nerves, mostly because like I think they're overdone. I really don't like slam poetry, those kinds of things. They kind of annoy me. It's because it's like, it gives off holier than thou vibes. I dislike it. I feel like I'm being talked down to when I hear slam poetry, right? I feel like I'm being like told things that I'm like, okay, cool. Why are you like talking to me like that? I don't like it. Everyone has different opinions, right? That's my personal opinion. If you like slam poetry, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm showing my opinion. I went into the Barbie movie not knowing a lot about it, and I actually really enjoyed the Barbie movie. Even with that whole, like, what's her name? America something? I don't know her name. The mom. She had this whole slam poetry moment. And I was like, okay, you know what? Whatever. I just, like, said, whatever. You know, it's not for me. That section is not for me. That's fine. That monologue is not for me. But the rest of the movie was great. It was amazing. And you know what? I gave it a chance. I'm like, oh, shit, you know. And that's what happens when you engage with things that you don't agree with. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to go into a film and turn your brain off for a little bit and just watch brain rot garbage. It's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that either. And there's also messages in the Avengers, like him saying like the Marvel cinematic. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the Marvel cinematic universe. There's good storytelling in there, and there's great messaging in there as well. Like great stories, great messaging, great morals. But you just don't want to watch it or engage with it because you just disagree. And that's fine, you don't have to, but don't talk down to people who enjoy that stuff.
On a smaller scale. A mindset of consume, consume, consume without even thinking to question how the sausage gets made. Just
Sometimes they do question how it gets made. A lot of people are upset with Disney for what they're doing to Marvel. So, and what they did to Star Wars. So it's not just consume, consume, consume. It's that people like to consume content that they enjoy.
lacking any sense of moral fiber in their bones. A lot of them just genuinely have zero conviction most of the time. And there are films that I will never review here because of that, such as when I do my History of Werewolf Movies video, I will not mention The Wolf of Snow Hollow, because the writer, director, and star, Jim Cummings, has been very vocally in favor of AI-generated imagery.
Just because he disagrees with you, you're not going to talk about the film? I mean, that's up to you, but...
multiple times. I don't think anyone should support his work going forwards, and this is the last time that I will ever publicly acknowledge him. Horror is a mirror. It is countercultural. It is punk. It is that way, and it always has been. But if we are using punk as an...
Horror is not, like, super counterculture, either. And it's not punk. People enjoy, like, a lot of people enjoy horror. That's why there's conventions of it. It's not like... It's not like you're different for enjoying horror movies. You're not some special snowflake. You're not some special little snowflake because you like horror, and you're like, oh, I'm so different because I like horror movies and most people don't, and the messaging and whatever. Like, it's not that. A lot of people like horror movies. And when good horror movies come out, guess what? A lot of people watch it. You're not special just because you watch horror movies.
Example, then to further that example as a subculture, they have always had to deal with Nazi punks trying to infiltrate their spaces and co-opt their style and language to try and distill a message of hate through their mouthpiece that it was not designed for. As a community, they have worked for decades to build a set of tools and understanding to deal with those issues internally. And I'm here today to argue that we should be doing the same thing within our horror spaces. But there is this psychological issue that we have to get over first, which is that people are not willing to criticize others within the genre space when they are doing wrong, and are not willing to criticize aspects of horror films either out of social politeness, because it is a small community, or more frequently, allow their values to take second place behind their love of genre.
That's not necessarily true. Some people do that. So, like, there's nothing wrong, like, with criticizing a movie if it's bad. It's just that some people don't, like...
Or out of financial benefit. All three of these are an issue that we need to address because
there's nothing wrong with financial benefit. If you want to review something and you think that if I review it a certain way, I'm not going to get as much money, like, there's actually nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting money. Now, if you get money in negative ways that affect people and affect society in a bad way, well, yeah, that is a problem. But just because, like, I know what he's gonna refer to, like, with Wendigoon, like, he does, like, very base talks about horror movies and horror topics and all these things, and he doesn't really insert a lot of his opinion in there, and it's very, like, you know, like, for everybody. And that's fine, because he knows that it appeals to a wider audience, and that's what YouTube is kind of for, to appeal to a wider audience, which means more money, so he can keep doing what he likes. There's nothing wrong with that.
They allow active harm to be transgressed and to be continued.
Harm in what way? Harm in what way, man? Words don't harm people. I mean, that's hard to say, because they harm your emotions. But harm is a very strong word. Harming people is a very physical thing. Like, if you harm somebody, like, what does that even mean? What do you mean by harm? Because you can harm somebody's emotions. That's not that big of a deal. That heals over time very fast. And it's not, and you're gonna harm people's emotions whether you like it or not. It's gonna happen. Like, it just is what it is. You can have any, like, you harmed people's emotions. You did harm. By your standards. I don't think it's harm, but...
To explain this, I think it would help if we...
I mean, you did try to harm people's careers and their money. So, I have to think about that a little bit more.
The film
that phrase, harm. I don't like that phrase.
It is not a conservative horror film, but the conversation around it helps to demonstrate this point. The film is about a group of hired goons who infiltrate the home of a wealthy businessman to kidnap his daughter to hold her for ransom in an abandoned mansion outside of town, where group tensions begin to rise as they start to doubt what they have done, and they begin to infight as they suspect that the mafia has sent a hitman to the mansion after them to retrieve the girl. And then near the end of the film, we actually learn that the girl herself is the hitman, and that she's also a vampire who has orchestrated the whole thing, and the climax is her hunting the remaining team members who have to fight for their lives. Okay, so the only problem with this is that the vampire reveal is shown on the poster, and is in the trailer, and is in the name of the film. You literally cannot know that this film exists without also knowing that it is about a vampire girl. This is clear in every aspect of its marketing. You don't have films named Laurie, Clarice, Nancy, or Sydney, but you do have films named Chucky, Frankenstein, Dracula, Megan, Leatherface, It, Jason, Freddy, and Carrie. If a first name is ever in a horror title, historically that is to delineate who the monster is in the film. Every single piece of the film's marketing did not care if you actually
well, that's just bad marketing then.
Or not.
And
they
bad
just wanted your
planning.
Money, and that's an issue. Now, I promise that
that's not why is but explain why that's an issue. Like, if it's bad, it's just bad. There's nothing wrong with, like, wanting money. Like, in Your Hills Have Eyes, you literally talk about how Wes Craven had to like make films because he was like broke. It happens, you know, like sometimes companies need to make people have to make movies because they're broke and that's what they want to do. And just because it's bad doesn't like, if it's bad, it's not gonna make money. You know?
Is not going to turn into a list of people who annoyed me on Twitter, but to explain this concept, we're going to have to talk about Twitter for a short while longer. So, people, including myself, began to complain that Abigail was not fun to watch, because you already knew how it was going to end because you'd seen the trailer, which I think is a valid argument. Not all movies are ruined by spoilers, but certainly some can be. You don't watch an Ozu movie for the plot, but if the work is designed to be a mystery, then you do. Abigail has several references throughout to Agatha Christie. It is clearly designed for you to initially not know what is going on.
Well, it's just a bad movie then.
It is steeped in the aesthetics of mystery films. And showing that Abigail is
How is this conservative, though?
would be like showing the mask reveal of a ghost face in a Scream movie, or even more similarly, including Gabriel from Malignant in those trailers. It would ruin what is designed to clearly be a fun whodunit film, whose base appeal is not knowing what is going to happen next. But Bloody Disgusting podcaster Trace Thurman came out and tried to stop people from talking negatively about the film, because fanaticism means that every perceived attack on the genre must be quickly snuffed out, saying, "Gentle reminder that the trailer gave away the whole movie isn't a valid critique, even if it is true, #Abigail."
No, I do disagree with that. If the trailer gives it away, that kind of sucks, because how else are you going to find out about the movie? Now, you can view it from both lenses. Like, you can say, like, okay, look, the trailer gave it away, so my viewing was not as good, but let's look at the movie objectively, even without the trailer. And you can separate those two things. Like, even without that, you can still tell that it might be a bad movie. Like, that's not the end factor that makes it bad or good.
And this supremely got on my nerves, and I said, I mean, it's definitely a valid criticism if it makes the first hour of the movie feel completely pointless, because you know all of the things that's happening on screen revolving the crime family don't actually matter because you know it's actually a vampire. No. To which he said, that only matters for your first viewing. Do you like all movies less on a second viewing because you know what's going to happen? And I just want to ask, what the fuck are you talking about? That basic
No, bro, that's a good point too. Like, if you can watch a horror movie multiple times and still feel that same discomfort, right? So that's still they're both making valid points, right? You can, I don't know why you're getting pissed off though. He's making a valid point. Like, okay, you can criticize the movie itself, but you could also criticize the marketing and be like, look, because the marketing kind of fucked it up, they kind of, they messed up, right? So now my first viewing was not as good as it could have been, but does that make the movie itself within the context of the movie any better or like worse? Like now you can separate it, so you can just like be like, okay, the movie itself is bad, but it was made worse because of the trailer. It's also, yeah, but it's not a valid critique of the movie itself. It's a critique about why it flopped and why it was maybe not as enjoyable.
The first time you experience the art, which is probably also the only time you're ever going to watch it. I really don't see
That's not
yearly rewatch of Abigail in my future. I only rewatch
because you didn't like it
for one of two reasons. Okay, so the first is for work if I need to revisit something for the channel. But in my free time, I only do that if I really like a movie in the first place. And if an advertising campaign is...
Oh, wow. So if you didn't like it, you don't rewatch it. Well, that's most people, dude. That's most people, which means that it wasn't good enough to rewatch. I've watched Ghibli movies over and over and over and over and over again. I never get tired because they're good. They're really, really good. But I'm not gonna watch, I don't know, Moana more than once. Like, I'm good. I'm good. But that doesn't neglect whether it's a good or bad movie because I was spoiled on something.
Is so bad that it ruined the initial watch and put a bad taste in my mouth. Why would I ever then go back to experience that again? 20 years ago, when I was a kid, I loved the series of Unfortunate Event books, and my mom took me to see the movie when it came out, and kids were yelling so loudly in the theater that you couldn't even hear the dialogue, and it ruined the experience for me, and I never watched it again, despite loving the books, and I still...
That's a you problem, my dude. That's a complete you problem. That does not neglect, or that doesn't take away from the fact if it's a good movie or not. That's a you problem.
Today, remember what a negative experience it was watching that movie in the theater. You don't develop a fan base and years of dedication to your work of art if your marketing ruins the initial reception to the film. The second watches are defined by the crucial initial experience and impressions the movie made on us. Watching a movie for the first time and watching a movie for the second time are two drastically different experiences, and you are doing those for extremely different reasons. Trace then tried to argue that it isn't fair to judge the film based on its horrible marketing campaign, but it totally is. The film and movie theater do not exist in a vacuum outside of the realities of time and space. I cannot, through sheer force of will, forget that I was bombarded with these ads when I watched the film. The trailers, the poster, the Blu-ray box, and every aspect of the delivery of the art are all singular pieces of the art itself. They are intrinsically connected to each other. Trace then tried to say that I was wrong by sending me a tweet from horror filmmaker Ted Geoghegan, whose work I do like, and I've said that to him. But he said, makes me think of the very first trailer from For Dusk Till Dawn, back in '96. People said it gave away the second act twist, and Rodriguez replied, great, now people will know what you're in store for. To which I would just have to say that just because someone dropped the ball 30 years ago does not mean that we have to stand on ceremony and continue to drop the ball in perpetuity.
Okay,
we
bro,
can
but
do
like
better than this.
Okay.
Both Abigail and From Dusk Till Dawn
I'm just gonna say the same thing over
work
and over
better
again.
as films if the people watching them do not know that they are secretly about vampires. The scripts are clearly intended for that to be a surprise. That is a horrible argument that does not make sense. I genuinely think that any filmmaker who made a mystery film would protest behind closed doors if the...
But also, if people don't want to go into a horror movie about a vampire, like, they might want to know that it's about vampires. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just want to know. Like, you're okay with being spoiled. That doesn't take for some people, that doesn't take away. You're just being really extra.
Advertising people tried to show the reveal of the mystery itself in the trailer. I mean, really, what are we doing here? I used to work in film market research, often on the advertising end. This is objectively a bad advertising campaign
Yeah.
that only works
Okay.
in the short term for a small amount of initial money, but burns customers once they realize that they have been had. I genuinely believe that you could cut several different types of trailers for this film that don't even hint that it is about vampires, that would have still helped to build a loyal fan base. And if you want a good example of this, just go watch the trailers for Malignant and Barbarian. They both had great campaigns. Both are monster films that do not have the monster even hinted at in the trailer, and makes the Abigail advertising team look like total amateurs. BJ Colangelo came out in defense of the trailer showing the end of the film, saying, "If they hit it, Universal has to bank on people showing up for a movie about a little girl being kidnapped and held hostage. There could have been a tease that there's something more to her, but that's a big risk for general audiences who already assume the worst. Like, oh no, won't somebody think of poor Universal, whose music division alone has a market cap of $53 billion.
Okay. This is getting so redundant over and over. We get your point, okay? You don't have to keep proving it over and over. You've proved it. We get your idea. The marketing was garbage. Please check your scripts. You're repeating yourself. You're repeating yourself already. Please do something. Have someone check your scripts, man. This is really bad. Like, how many times has he said the same thing? How many times has he said the same thing over and over and over again? Like, seriously, my guy? I might skip a little bit because he's just repeating himself on, like, bad marketing, bad marketing, bad marketing. Someone saying, no, it's good, bad marketing. And what does this have to do with bad conservative horror movies? This has nothing to, like, there's no conservative message in this movie. So what does this have to do with your point?
Their
Nothing.
music subsidiary is literally the largest music company in the world.
Okay,
and it is just
nobody
a portion
cares.
of the larger Universal brand. But they had no other option other than to ruin the movie that filmmakers had carefully spent years of their life putting together. They just had to do it. By the way, Abigail ended up making $10 million in its opening weekend. Do you know what else made $10 million in their opening weekends? Barbarian, Thanksgiving, and Talk to Me all made $10 million or so in the first weekend.
Okay.
The first Omen and Renfield did 9, Evil Dead Rise did 24, but that shouldn't really count. And none of these gave away their entire films and instead posted off vibes, fun energy, and confidence. There is zero evidence that the Abigail trailer and marketing campaign gave them any advantage over similarly sized horror movies. Malignant did not make $10 million on its weekend, but it also came out in 2021 and was still affected by COVID. And even then, it still made $5 million. There is no logical argument to be made in defense of Abigail's marketing team. And so to do so,
well, it was just bad marketing. You can say that.
And also, the very next day after our interaction, Trace tweeted about the new film titled The Coffee Table and said, "Hands down one of my favorite recent viewing experiences because my jaw was on the floor for most of its runtime. Go in blind. Go in blind." And this happens just about every time that you publicly make very light criticism of a horror movie. When the trailer for the new Strangers movie came out recently, I tweeted that The Strangers was never particularly good in the first place, and that we didn't need to keep getting these things that are essentially just remakes every single time. To which Vicente Francisco Garcia, who we have talked about before here, said, "The OG film is a masterpiece." To which I said, "I mean, that is using the word masterpiece pretty liberally. Also, why comment on my post? I've literally seen you tweet that you think I'm an idiot before. It's not like I'm going to play nice with you." To which he said, "I have literally no idea who you are or any memory of prior interaction with you, but it's..."
Oh my god. Oh, dude, the negative bias on this man is so sad. He's literally like, I know you think I'm an idiot. I know you think I'm stupid. Wow. That's really bad. And if someone thinks something's a masterpiece, like, come on. You're being so picky. Also, what movie is this? The OG movie of what? Strangers?
Film is a masterpiece.
Strangers? Okay, let's see what rating it got. Maybe, I don't know. Strangers original movie. Let's see. What'd you get? No, it didn't do well at all. It got 50% on Rotten Tomatoes at 6.1. Okay, I mean, like, maybe it was bad, but the guy liked it, so. At this point, you don't have to say that you're an idiot or anything. Oh my god. Like, okay, yeah. I'll concede that maybe it wasn't a good film. Never watched it. So,
I said. I mean, that is using the word masterpiece pretty liberally. Also, why comment on my post? I've literally seen you tweet that you think
it just had to end here. Like, I mean, that's using the word masterpiece pretty liberally. And then you say why. You say why. This is why I hate Twitter. Like, you only get so many words to use. I hate Twitter so much. Also, why comment on my post? Because he can. He can. He wants to disagree with you.
I'm an idiot before. It's not like I'm going to play nice with you. To which he said, I have literally no idea who you are or any memory of prior interaction with you. But it's funny to me how you have no issue bashing a film but immediately get wounded by someone disagreeing with your public post. We went on like that for a little while and I wasn't wounded. I really try not to take things like that personally, but I'm always curious about the psychology behind why people talk
sounds
I
personal.
never really liked how that guy just talks to most people on a daily basis. Our interaction even ended with him saying, oh my god, you are that guy. Yeah, I was rude about that because I did end up watching your video and hearing your side and completely disagreed with it and thought it was a terrible, horrible, no good take. LMAO. Copyright is there for a reason. Good day, sir. Nothing is allowed to be criticized by these people who subscribe to this kind of mindset. And this fanatical pattern of blind worship needs to be interrupted because a healthy media relationship can only be achieved on a...
And that's fine. But you want him to agree with you. You want him to be like, you know what, you're right. You're right, Zane. You're always right. It's okay.
Because a healthy media relationship can only be achieved on a cultural level. If we all acknowledge that nothing is beyond basic criticism, no matter how much we may or
you can criticize anything. That's fine.
I could talk for hours about things that I don't like in my favorite movies.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from my base enjoyment of them.
That's perfectly fine.
It actually reinforces the things I appreciate about them as works of art, and lets us learn how we can interact with the art on a deeper level. Going back to that Abigail example for a second. The weekend it hit theaters, the most hated Hollywood Joe Russo said, horror fans, it's important Abigail beats Civil War this weekend. Industry analysts have been sharpening their pencils for weeks, ready to write that horror is out, but we know horror is never out. Don't let them trick execs into taking the gas off horror. Plus, Abigail rips. This is the kind of language that fundamentalist Christians use, and we are subjecting people to listening to it in relation to a moderately decent movie about vampire children eating people. I hate to make this comparison because it is so overdone, but it really is that kind of Orwellian fascist idea that there needs to be a constant enemy to fight to keep morale high among the common people. That every new
He's just saying, you haven't even watched the movie. How can you say it's good or bad? This is before it came out. It's like, guys, the movie's coming out. Please go support and watch. And if you don't like it, then you can critique it. But you haven't even watched it. How would you know it's good or bad? You haven't even watched it, my dude. At this point, this is before it comes out. So you're already putting, like, what?
It's a strange battle to be won that is fought in secret for esoteric reasons. That there is a clear winner and a loser. That all of this is exceptionally more important than it actually is. These people act like there's not been a constant steady stream of new horror movies made almost weekly since the 1950s. Horror is fine. It isn't going anywhere. It will outlast us all, and it is and always has been essentially always profitable. There is no battle to be...
No, it's not always profitable. It's really hard. Horror is a really hard genre to do correctly. It's difficult because if you don't get the tension right, if you don't get the script right, if you don't get the story right, there's so many things hinging on good writing and good set design and good lighting and tension and everything. It's hard to do it properly. It really is. So no, sometimes horror does poorly because it takes more work to make a good movie. That's why. Maybe some people think it's dying because maybe it's not doing as well, or maybe it's not earning as much money, which is true because you're also limiting your audience with horror movies because it's mostly for adults. And adults that are okay with violence and gore and being afraid and being uncomfortable. That's why it doesn't do as well as other movies. So no, horror is not inherently profitable. It's actually the opposite. So the fact that it's even doing well goes to show how creative you need to be, or that the people doing horror are very creative people in order to sell a good product. Because a movie is a product. Because you buy it to watch.
Never has been. There will be a new horror movie released this weekend, and another next weekend, and another the weekend after that, and the weekend after that, and the weekend after that.
What? No. A horror movie is not released every weekend. That is absolutely not true. Maybe on Shudder. I don't have Shudder, so.
to think that some of these examples will be somewhat seen as a dividing line, and is going to be a cultural linchpin within the horror community of who actually is coming at this from an art perspective, and who is just about raw and ending consumption, in defense of companies that are so large they could buy your whole town and sell you for parts. If you go back to Trace's Twitter, the only time that he ever mentions the Late Night with the Devil controversy is through mocking it, and making light of the situation, when he said during that ongoing conversation, "Would love for someone to make a themed calendar of the daily controversies that take place on horror Twitter. Like, seriously, what are we angry about today?" Although I couldn't help but laugh when days after our small argument he seemingly was still steaming about me and subtweeted me saying, "Can't decide if I loathe people bitching about trailers or about publicity stills more." Someone else said, "Please don't be subtweeting me, I come in peace about trailers usually," to which he then responded, "Wasn't about a specific person, just a general reaction to everyone's thoughts on that super."
It's not about you! Oh my god, bro. It's not about you! This other guy is like, don't be subtweeting me, I come in peace, usually. It's not about you. It's about, I guess it's multiple people were complaining about it, or talking about it. So, no, dude, it's not about you. It's about the fact that you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You think you have main character syndrome, and every little thing is about you. And I think I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, so y'all chill out for a little bit while I go do this thing, go use the bathroom, and get your drinks, get your food, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. Hello. Yoink. Okay, let me bring up my chat again. Okay, so yeah, let's just go straight back into watching.
Man still. Plus remnant feelings to everyone complaining about these spoilers in the Abigail and Trap trailers. From what I can tell though, I'm actually the only person they got mad at over Abigail. Then, several days—
Don't know, bro. Maybe it's multiple people. Hold up. Maybe it's multiple people. Maybe it's not just you. Why is everything about you? Not everything is about you. Why are you so negative? Jesus Christ. Maybe there is multiple people. You don't live in a bubble.
Wonder how the marketing for Carrie would fly in today's spoiler-adverse culture. Okay, so, keeping with Late Night with the Devil. Tananarive Due said about the film, Late Night with the Devil is immersive and irresistible. It's the kind of horror movie that climbs into the car with you for a ride home and slips under your covers. And David Desmalchin, his
Just don't give a shit about AI. People don't care about all the same things you care about.
conversation about the film's use of AI imagery, and not mentioning it is a deliberate decision on her part.
No, it's
Cynicism
not.
that is
Maybe
being
she
done
didn't
in the defense
know.
of horror that is allowing conservative harm to be perpetrated. Mick Garris did this as well, posting essentially the same thoughts without ever actually addressing any of the problems surrounding it as a work of art. But that isn't all that surprising to me because his podcast took NFT sponsorships during the heyday of all that, and even had NFT trading cards featuring pictures of him sitting at the microphone recording the
Maybe they just don't care about it, bro. Maybe it's not that big of a deal to them. That's fine. Why is everything so, like, intense? Not everything has to be so intense.
podcast on OpenSea. Something that I think will forever, at least in my mind, taint his otherwise very impressive and interesting legacy. For one last example of this.
That's my shoulder. Oof. I don't know if y'all heard that pop. But look, okay, just because someone goes into NFTs because they think it might be profitable, there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody knew what was happening at the time with NFTs. It was really, like, kind of Wild West situation. So this guy, just because he went into NFTs, doesn't make him a good or a bad person. You know? I don't know the full thing. Like, maybe he tried to scam people into buying his NFTs. But maybe not. I don't know. But just because you sell NFTs, like, people can buy it or not. It's up to them.
Mike Flanagan in this time did the exact same thing. When someone asked him his thoughts on the AI issue surrounding the film, and all he said was, "My thoughts are that I think that this is an excellent movie." He deliberately ignored what their question was asking, but
Yeah.
still responded to them so that they understood that he was deliberate.
No, dude, it's not that he deliberately ignored it. It's that he's saying, I don't care. He's basically, his response is like, oh, what's up with AI art? It's like, this movie's great. You're telling him to his face, like, yeah, it's not he's ignoring it. I mean, I guess he is, but he's giving you his answer. He's saying, I don't care that it has AI art. It's a good movie, despite it or not.
Ignoring them. At the end of every single year, there's an article published through some major outlet that collects the list of the so-called worst movies of the year. These are always extremely popular, and get their intended goal of making people publicly performatively angry and talking about them. At the beginning of 2023, it was Variety with their list of worst films of 2022, that included great films like Bones and All and 3,000 Years of Longing, who had the honor of having that one that was quote tweeted roughly 1,500 times, having comments from the likes of Elijah Wood and Dan Slott. All in all, a pretty successful endeavor for something that probably took 30 minutes of real actual work. That they will, almost certainly repeat every single year to these same results. We all know that worst of lists are almost in every single circumstance critical malpractice. They're trashy, attention-seeking, purposefully contrary, and clickbait incarnate. It is something that should be avoided in most instances, at all costs, and should not be given the attention or time of day. If nobody gave them any interaction, they just simply wouldn't exist. They're all made because they're popular, and most people would rather have their internet
Okay, then what? If people like it, if people like making worse stuff, it's their opinion. It's their opinion. It doesn't matter, dude. If you don't agree, you can just say I disagree. It's not dangerous to have these things. You're framing it in a way that it's like, it's evil, it's bad to have these things.
points dunking on these articles and actually having them, not exist. But I personally don't believe that these things are necessarily wrong 100% of the time. The logic should not apply to art that is actively co-signing harm. And so we're going to do a little bit of that here this time. Everybody who's watched me for a while knows that I love Stephen King and respect him deeply. But there's something that we do disagree on. In his article, Why We Crave Horror, he famously said, "We go to reestablish our feelings of essential normality. The horror movie is innately conservative, even reactionary. And I flat out think this is wrong." It is a quote that often gets taken out of context and used in bad faith, as you could imagine. If you read the entire piece, he's essentially arguing that horror is often used to set and reinforce the standard of what is seen as normal versus abnormal. We have
That's one way that you can use horror. Yeah, see, like, everyone has their different ways of seeing horror, and why, like, you can disagree with him. Like, you're disagreeing with him. It's fine. Why is it such a...
The idealization of the entire piece, he's essentially arguing that horror is often used to set and reinforce the standard of what is seen as normal versus abnormal. We have the idealization... If you read the entire piece, he's even reactionary. And I flat out think this is wrong. It is a quote that often gets taken out of context and used in bad faith, as you could imagine. If you read the entire piece, he's essentially arguing that horror is often used to set and reinforce the standard of what is seen as normal versus abnormal. We have the idealization of...
That's what he uses horror for.
...of evil that is attacking it. That is essentially something that is based in tropes, and in that, based in stereotypes, which is an argument that can definitely be made, especially at the time of writing that, during the height of Reaganism and teenagers getting killed over and over again in slasher films. On a base level, you can see what he's trying to get to, and it isn't as radical of a take as it may seem on the surface, but I still mostly disagree. I do find it funny that around Halloween, conservative outlets will publish articles talking about horror movies that conservatives can enjoy without...
Okay, yeah, because most conservatives are Christian, so they don't want to... Oh my god, my dog, dude. What, dog? Don't bark at me to come back in. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Alrighty. Let's go back.
I love reading those articles because it takes a particular kind of skill to bend something so wrongly that by the end of the conversation it feels like we're talking
Wait, hold on, what?
conflicting with their views. And I love reading those articles.
It's the same way that you don't want to see these views in your movies, that they don't want to see those views in their movies. So why you gotta be that way?
Because it takes a particular kind of skill to bend something so wrongly that by
No, it's not bending anything wrongly. It's because you're assuming that horror is innately leftist when it's not. It's about human condition and fear, right? Horror is not about left or right or anything. It's about fear. Truly, that is what it is. Hold on. Like, legitimately. So, if you have horror being about fear, it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum it's on. It's going to be, like, if it's well done, it's going to be scary, right? So if conservatives want to stay in their bubble and reinforce their bubble, they want to watch conservative films in the same way that you want to reinforce your bubble and stay in leftist films and say, like, conservative ideals should not be shared. You can watch your leftist films. I'm not saying don't. And you don't have to watch conservative films if you don't want to. But don't start saying that just because conservatives want to stay in their bubble, that's a negative thing when you're doing the same thing, because it's completely hypocritical.
the end of the conversation, it feels like we're talking about something completely different. I love art, and I particularly love how many different people can watch the same thing and come away with conflicting feelings and inspiration and ideas about certain works. That's what, makes all of this fun. But these are clearly so far off the mark they aren't even in the same ballpark or playing the same sport as the rest of us. In their 2014 article titled The 8 Most Conservative Horror Films of All Time, The Federalist actually tried to argue that Night of the Living Dead is one of the best conservative horror movies ever made. One of the first mainstream movies to have a black male protagonist that ends with a definitive statement about how black people are treated by lynch mobs at the time. Actually,
that has nothing to do with conservatism at all. Conservatism has nothing to do with race, really. Like, maybe you're conflating white supremacy and conservatism because of the alt-right specifically, like the right, the very right-leaning people, they have some kind of racial supremacy, but it's not, like, conservatives have very little to do with race. It's mainly, like, establishing the family system and, less government. Like, those are the main pillars of conservatism. It's not that it's like, yeah, you have to hate black people to be conservative. I know a lot of conservatives that are black, and I know a lot of conservatives that have black friends, and I know the black friend argument, but, like, I'm not talking about me. I don't have to defend myself because I know I'm not racist, and I know those people aren't racist. So there's no defense to that. All I can say is I know myself, and I know those people, and they're good people. Right? So, this guy, he's basically saying, conservatives are taking away a different message from me, and so they're wrong. When people tell you that when you're viewing something wrong, as in when you viewed The Hills Have Eyes in a way that people didn't agree with, and they were telling you, in a nice way, by the way, most of the comments were not like, this is dumb as fuck, this is, like, they weren't being rude. They were actually giving you criticism, like, hey, man, I think you dropped the ball on this reading. They disagreed with you same way that you disagree with conservative readings. So why is it such a negative thing to have conflating thoughts? Like, you can discuss it, and you can disagree, but disagreeing is not innately a bad thing. So it's just bad to you because you want to be right. And you have resentment towards white people and conservatives, specifically white conservatives.
Argue isn't the right word choice there, because if you actually read what they said, no argument is made as to why it is conservative. They just say that it's a good movie, and that's because they don't actually have any values, and they don't really believe in anything.
Left my door open. I mean, sometimes people can express themselves and sometimes they don't. Like, maybe that person didn't know how to explain their critique of horror or why they believed it was conservative or not, but they probably did. They probably explained why. What page is this?
Of a black male protagonist of all time. The
8 most conservative horror films of all time. Let's look it up. Most conservative horror films of all time. Let's see. Did they explain why? Night of the Hunter. Which one was it that he said? Night of the Living Dead. Let's see. I'm gonna read it out. It was a Night of the Living Dead, right? That he said.
Federalists actually tried to argue that Night of the Living Dead is one of the best.
Here we go. Okay. I'm gonna read out what it says. They're coming to get you, Barbara, and they were. George Romero's black and white classic film wasn't the first zombie film, but it invented the modern genre that continues with The Walking Dead. Complete with sudden eruption of mass homicide, long, boring stretches of interpersonal conflict between characters one hates, and most importantly, the feast. Over 45 years old, Night of the Living Dead still packs more of a punch than most Hollywood horror products, more than any film I can name. Night of the Living Dead feels like a nightmare captured on celluloid. While its most enduring legacy is a flood of mostly lesser zombie movies, Night of the Living Dead also helped inspire the film's industry voluntary age rating system of G, PG, R, and now PG-13 and NC-17. Roger Ebert's 1969 review of Night, really the story of shockingly irresponsible theater owner who played the film at a Saturday kiddie matinee, and the foolish parents who allowed their 9-year-olds to see it, tells the tale. Okay, no, yeah, they didn't give a review of why. Okay, so yeah, they didn't explain why, but maybe in the beginning it says it. Oh my god, this is really funny. So he's saying that horror is inherently leftist, while this site says that horror is inherently conservative. That's funny. It's not inherently anything, though. It's not. It's not. It's not anything. It's horror. It's about fear. Okay? Like, don't try to make it some big thing. It's not. The genre as a whole is not inherently anything. It's inherently about how to make people feel as uncomfortable as they can. It has nothing to do with whether it's political. Some films are inherently conservative and inherently, progressive. So, it varies from film. It's not specifically like, oh, the whole genre as a whole. You can't say romance is inherently conservative because it's a romance between, like, generally man and a woman, and it's like this is what some conservatives would say. Like, the most common romance trope is a man and a woman, they fall in love and they start a family. Like, that's romance. It's not. There's some romances that, yes, they're more conservative, and there's some romances that are more progressive, and some romances that are queer, yada yada, this and that, heteronormative, whatever the fuck. So no genre is inherently anything political. So the Federalist is also kind of being stupid by saying that. It's just their reading, because you can read it from your own perspective. Okay. Let's continue. Yeah, they didn't explain why it was conservative or not, which is kind of stupid. They should have explained a little bit more. But maybe it's just that it doesn't necessarily talk about politics. That's why they consider it conservative, even though that's not necessarily true.
Conservative horror movies ever made. You know, one of the first mainstream movies to have a black male protagonist that ends with a definitive statement about how black people are treated by lynch mobs at the time. Actually, argue isn't the right word choice there, because if you actually read what they said, no argument is made as to why it is conservative. They just say that it's a good movie, and that's because they don't actually have any values, and they don't really believe in anything. These articles in general are pretty unhinged and give you a perspective on the genre that you never
They
see.
do believe in things, they just didn't talk about it. Like, I assume they believe in things. Most people believe in and have some sort of belief system. It's just that you don't agree with it, so it's not valid to you. It's like saying exactly what you said can be seen from the conservative point of view to trans people. Like, just because, like, I don't agree with you, you don't exist. So trans people don't exist because I don't think you're real. That's exactly what you've just done. Same exact thought process.
In other spaces, because they're wrong. But it also shows that these people have to force pre-existing art to fit into their ideologies, because there's so little good art that reinforces their abhorrent beliefs. Breitbart did an article called 5 Great Horror Movies That Warned Us About the Woke Gestapo, that includes They Live, which John Carpenter himself has said is a movie about Ronald Reagan. On another list, they talk about how good Jeepers Creepers was, because of course they do. They also praise Frailty for being a pro-Christian movie about a man who's on a serious mission from God, which...
And that's why artist intent is so important, right? Because you have these people who believe that something is like inherently conservative, or they view it from one point or another. Like, the artist literally said, oh yeah, this is about Ronald Reagan, it's not conservative. And then these conservatives are taking that and they're like, yes, this is our thing. But that just means that it's a very relatable film, right? It's very relatable no matter what side you're leaning on, which is what you want. So basically you're saying yourself, my dude, like, you have people that believe what's it called, that they see the same film. You have a conservative and a leftist, and they see the same film and they both take away separate things. That means that horror is not inherently anything. You're making the same exact arguments as conservatives, the conservatives that you so hate. You're making the same exact argument as they are, and without showing proof. Just because some horror writers are gay or whatever, or like left-leaning, doesn't mean that all of them are, and doesn't necessarily mean that that piece of art is meant to be a political stance.
If you have seen Frailty, that is a very funny thing to say about that movie. But there's always been this thing that I've encountered more and more in recent years that is becoming more of a growing problem among modern horror releases, that I finally decided I wanted to publicly talk about it, which is this kind of anti-horror horror movie, where you sit down to watch a film and you get tricked into watching basically a conservative propaganda think piece that is cloaked in the cinematic language of a traditional horror film, but one that does not align with the values of outsider horror art that you would expect going into it. Anybody who takes the form of horror cinema and then contorts it in a way to trick the audience into being exposed to a conservative theme that they believe in and want to share in their art is being purposefully disingenuous to the very reasons that
So conservatives are making their own films. Okay, what's wrong with conservatives making films that push their point of view? There's nothing wrong with that. Like, is it good or bad? Like, look at it from an objective standpoint. Is it well written? Does it have a good story?
which exist in the first place and was created. These tools were not made to be used in a way that argues that the very people who created them don't deserve life, freedoms, and dignity. And this has been done many times.
What?
And sometimes has been done quite successfully. Be used
Hold
in a way
on.
that
Hold on. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down.
argues that the very people who created them don't deserve life, freedoms, and dignity. And this has been done many times.
No conservative, I'm not gonna say no conservative, but most conservatives and most center people, or people in the center, are not arguing for the removal of life, liberties, and whatever, or life at all. They're completely the opposite. They want less government, right? They want less government intervention. They want more freedoms, as stated by them. Now, there are some on the extreme right that basically do a loop, and they're like, yes, we want a Christian theocracy, which is exactly what we ran away from the British, which is stupid. That's dumb. We want more freedoms. Like, conservatives want more freedoms, more rights for people. Like, what they're not arguing for the removal of rights. Maybe from your point of view. The only time that I can think that they're trying to remove rights is abortion, which I have my thoughts on. I'm not going to talk about that. But that's the only time that I think they've, like, been trying to revoke rights.
Before, and sometimes has been done quite successfully. Most famously, I would argue that The Exorcist has a very conservative bent to it. It is literally a tale of the American youth being corrupted, and then only saved by the establishments that we are told are here to protect us both physically and spiritually. That
Okay.
doesn't stop it from being an incredibly well-made work of art, though. It just needs
Perfect.
to be viewed, appreciated, and critiqued within the political and cultural space that it was made and exists in. And you can basically say the same thing about any good horror film that has a major cop protagonist character. Near Dark is another example of an amazing work of horror that is, at its core, deeply fascist. A movie can be exceptionally fun, bombastic, and very well made, and still have that be true. In fact, spectacle is a huge aspect of fascist art. It tells the story of Caleb, the very picture of the idealization of the American youth. He is the son of a farmer, and the family live off of the land, until one day Caleb decides that this life is too small for him, and he runs away with a group of nomadic queer punks, who end up being vampires, who turn him into one of them and initiate him into their way of life that is hidden away in the shadows. He is only cured of his vampirism, which is merely a stand-in for sexual proclivities, when the lifeblood of the symbol of the American conservative traditionalist message is injected directly into his veins, where he then wakes up from this haze of a cloud that he's been trapped within, to realize how wrong he has been, and then he and the farmer team up to go hunt down and kill all the vampires. There are
Why are vampires the queer people? Like, I don't know. I haven't seen the film. I don't know if that's the right reading. But why specifically queer? Like, maybe, hold on. What movie did he say this was?
He is the very well made protagonist character. Near Dark is another
Near Dark. Near Dark film. Synopsis. Okay. So Caleb Colton, and he meets an attractive young drifter named May. She bites him in the neck, and then they run away because they are vampires. The most psychotic of vampires are, Okay, production. It could be like an analogy for more than just being queer. It could also be other things. It could maybe be like that hippie life, that nomadic life, not building a family. Like, those are things that it could be referencing. It's not necessarily that that it has to do with sexuality. So I don't know. I haven't seen the film. I can't talk about that. But it could be an analogy for multiple things.
example of an amazing work of horror that is, at its core, deeply fascist. A movie can be exceptionally fun, bombastic, and very well made, and still have that be true. In fact, spectacle is a huge aspect of fascist art. It tells the story of Caleb, the very picture of the idealization of the American youth. He is the son of a farmer, and the family live off of the land, until one day Caleb decides that this life is too small for him, and he runs away with a group of nomadic queer punks, who end up being vampires, who turn him into one of them and initiate him into their way of life that is hidden away in the shadows. He is only cured of his vampirism, which is merely a stand-in for...
I'm almost certain that's his dad. That's injecting his own blood into him. I don't think it has to necessarily to do with like being conservative or whatever. I think it's more like a family message, like, oh, your family will be your saving grace.
Sexual proclivities, when the lifeblood of the symbol of the American conservative traditionalist message is injected directly into his veins, where he then wakes up from this haze of a cloud that he's been trapped within, to realize how wrong he has been, and then he and the farmer team up to go hunt down and kill all the vampires. There are plenty of liberal figures within the pantheon of horror that help to prop up conservative values, or are just outright causing harm that still produce quality work. Again, I love
Why is it
Stephen
harm,
King.
though?
I will always be thankful for him.
How does
to help
that-
me on the path.
How does that harm people? You're saying that it's harming people, but you're not giving examples of how it's harming people. Because maybe if it's like, oh, it brought people to like, argue, like, violence or whatever. Like, okay, but that does not bring anybody to violence. It's just a message that they wanted to show about maybe like family, about moral values. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
To loving books, but at the same time, he sits at home every day for weeks tweeting about Trump in trial. But then the day after the police siege on Columbia, he was totally radio silence. Earlier this year,
Okay, maybe he
tweeted,
didn't care about
I'm
it.
not worried about AI because I got my mojo working, which is the epitome of the Republican "fuck you, got mine" attitude. A billionaire telling you that there's nothing to worry about because he is personally going to be fine. Francis Ford
Yeah, because that's not what he's saying though. What he's saying is I'll be fine because I know that I'm a good writer and I know that I've built myself up in a way that AI can try and copy, but I have my own style. So I'll be good. And most people should start to think like that, like build up your own individual style that AI can't copy. Because what does AI do? AI grabs and grabs and grabs from different sources. It conglomerates it, and you get this mush of a generalized style. So AI speaks in a very specific way, right? And the way that you speak will be different from the way that AI speaks. So you will still have your own individual style that can be different from AI. So you hold a different value than AI does. So just because it's a film or something made by AI, guess what? It's still going to be different from whatever you make. Your art still holds value, and the AI art could hold value to someone. Like, depending on how far we get with that stuff.
Coppola made one of the best horror films of all time with Bram Stoker's Dracula, but also was the financial backer of Victor Salva's Clown House in 1989, where the star of the film, Nathan Forrest Winters, was raped by the director. Coppola would later say, "I didn't know of anything improper going on, although I witnessed some things that caused me to raise an eyebrow. Only in retrospect did things really add up. You have to remember, while this was a tragedy, that the difference in age between Victor and the boy was very small. Victor was practically a child himself. Victor Salva was at the time 29. Nathan Forrest Winters was 12. According to the Los Angeles Times, just before Salva went to prison, he spoke to...
Jesus, that guy should not have made that statement. That is a really rough statement. I understand where he's coming from. Like, oh, I didn't see anything at the time because I wasn't thinking about it. Like, usually you see things in retrospect. Like, okay, maybe at the time you don't realize, like, oh, like it's something that I watched that now thinking about it, and now I see that I was in the wrong. Now I realize. But maybe because this guy's older, he only sees people as not necessarily like everyone is younger than him. Like, oh, they were both kids. Like, when you have a 70-year-old saying you're a kid, he says kid to everybody. So maybe like that's what he meant. I'm not gonna excuse what he said, but yeah, that's a rough comment. But I'm trying to like just think of it from his perspective, which is what Zane doesn't do. He doesn't think about things from anybody else's perspective. He only has his own way of viewing things. Hold on. Yeah, he only has his own way of viewing things, and it's never any other way. It's only his way.
Coppola, who told him that the experience would have value. Francis said it will make you a better artist, Salva recalls. He left out one important part: if you survive it.
Oh,
After
God.
prison, Coppola gave Salva a loan to help him get re-established, and I've read multiple times that he has been alleged to have personally sued Nathan Forrest Winters, the 12-year-old who was raped under his watch as a producer, for breaching his contract and publicly talking about the incident which harmed the box office returns of Clown House. After prison, Disney would famously hire Salva to direct Powder for them in 1995.
Okay, this whole sexual assault stuff I'm gonna skip because I can't agree with anybody who commits sexual assault. I don't know the story, I don't know anything about that, so we're gonna skip ahead a little
The
bit.
thing is that either despite their conservative leanings or connections to prominent figures who have caused harm, some of these movies can range from being pretty good to great iconic films. If we look at it in a vacuum, I do have to admit that at least the first act of Jeepers Creepers is technically well made. I think it is fair to say that The Exorcist is objectively a culturally revered film that is also quite good. It stands for an artistic merit in cinema beyond just what its baseline is saying. But the same cannot be said about the later exorcism subgenre that would spawn from this movie's success, that all to some extent have that lingering conservative leaning established and canonized in The Exorcist, with the worst that I've ever seen being the recent Pray for the Devil. Everything about this film is awful. I think it is my least favorite horror movie that I have ever paid to watch. It tells the story of a nun named Sister Anne, who is given the rare blessing by the church to assist in exorcisms, and uses the vague visual language of feminism to actually tell a story that is strongly anti-women's rights, as it uses the monster and metaphor of the devil as a means to preach an anti-abortion story, as the demons are able to enter these women who either had abortions or gave up their children for adoption. by literally moving into their stomachs and making them appear as if they are pregnant, using their sin of abandonment and killing their unborn children as a catalyst to infect them with evil. The devil in this film is only really interested in women, who made these decisions for themselves. And this movie is very goofy. From one of the male priests in the
I mean, yeah, this movie, I remember it being, like, really garbage. I remember watching some of it, because it was, like, on TV, and it was not good. It was not good. But there's other reasons why it's not good. Like, the plot was just all over the place. It was really, really rough while I was watching. I think I stopped, like, halfway, because I was like, this is whatever. This is boring. But there's other ways to critique it. Like, yeah, okay, whether it has an anti-abortion message or not, like, if you disagree with it, you disagree with it. And you can criticize it. That's perfectly fine. But you're basically saying it shouldn't exist. You're saying, like, okay, this thing that I dislike should not exist, and we have to stop it from existing. I don't like mosquitoes. I'm not gonna stop mosquitoes from existing. That's a bad example. But I can't stop mosquitoes from existing, and I'm not going to. Like, mosquitoes are dangerous, if you think about it, to some extent. They cause malaria, they get yellow fever, all that stuff. I can't stop it from existing. You know why? Because you can't. The only way you're going to stop conservatives from existing is to kill them. They're not going to stop thinking these things. Even if you spread your message and you stop them from, like, sharing their ideas, they will still congregate somehow. That's not a viable option. And you're saying, basically, we have to stop them from thinking these things. How? You can't stop anybody from thinking anything. Let's skip ahead. He's just on top of this movie.
And is something that should be dropped from future exorcism movies.
Okay, sure. If you think it should be dropped, maybe. It might make it a better film, it might not. But it's up to them whether they do it.
Dead Don't Die is an example of the kind of film that can become conservative by being misguided in how badly it is handling its writing. I actually do like this film a lot more than the average person, I think, as you ever really only hear negative things about it. It is a folksy kind of horror movie set in a small sleepy town that gets attacked by zombies. I actually do think that the film suffers because of the zombie stuff, because it is much better before they are actually introduced. Before we start though, it should be said that Jim Jarmusch is obviously not a conservative in any way. To prove this for the sake of the video, I'll include this here where he said in 2019, "The lesser of two evils does not appeal to me, and I don't like the two-party system anyway. I don't know why people aren't all over the Electoral College and this nonsense. Well, I do know why. Because it's the corporate media. What disturbs me now is that my friends who don't like Trump spend more time talking on Trump than the people who like Trump. Trump sets the content for the corporate media every day."
That is so
and by
true.
Corporate media, I mean MSNBC and CNN and Fox.
Absolutely.
They're all the same. It's just the Trump channels. I like some things about Elizabeth Warren. I, of course, like Bernie Sanders. I like what's his name? The governor of Washington State. Who's the only really environmentally conscious one? Jay Inslee. And of course, I like AOC. She's too young. But I'm trying to stay away from it right now because the Joe Biden thing makes me deeply depressed.
Absolutely.
But with
Yeah.
The Dead Don't Die, what he is trying to say is kind of so vapid that it ends up playing into conservative talking points. He's doing Romero zombies here through and through, but much more clunky than Romero ever did. When the dead come back to life, the first thing a lot of them do is start playing on their cell phones and mumbling about the shitty Wi-Fi. It almost
Oh,
comes
that's
across
so
as if
funny,
the
though.
creator's Facebook posts were adapted into
That's fucking hilarious. Dude, I think this is not meant to be a horror film. I think it's... What is this? The Dead Don't Die? Maybe it's satire. Absurdist zombie comedy film. It's not a horror film. But I guess the zombies.
film. Steve Buscemi's character, Farmer Frank, is a horrible racist who wears an altered MAGA hat to make sure that everybody knows that when he says "Make America Great Again," he's specifically talking about white people. And this is included in the film, but is never
Okay.
actually dealt with in any meaningful, specific way. Before he realizes that zombies are attacking his property, he impulsively shoots a black one in the head on his porch, without warning. But then he ends up dying the next scene, and the film has no interest in actually dealing with this outside of the basic presentation of who this person is. And it ends with a scene where Tom Waits' character, Hobo Bob, who is a
Hobo
hermit
Bob.
who lives away from society because he dislikes us, and he's narrating about the empty-headed consumerist culture of America, while our
Yeah,
main cop
okay.
characters, who are the only survivors left in the town, are callously shooting people in the head that they've known for decades. And in a way,
They're-
it is maybe
They're dead. They're zombies. They're not human anymore. They're not human anymore. They're dead. If my mom turns into a zombie and starts trying to eat my brains, fucking course I'm gonna shoot her. Of course, I need to live. I don't care if she's my mom. I don't care who it is. That's not my mom anymore. That's somebody else in my mom's body. That's so dumb. Like, just killing people. Yeah, dude. Also, it's an absurdist fucking comedy film. It's not a horror movie. Jesus Christ. It's not supposed to be, like... whatever. Okay.
Trying to say something negative about the police, but to me, I think that is kind of a generous reading, and my experience with it was that it was a sad and depressing film where we're watching a 70-year-old artist kind of flounder while attempting to and failing to write anything helpful about the current political climate, while at the same time kind of misunderstanding how zombie stories traditionally function. They slash
Well,
it's a movie that I am fully convinced
comedy,
was only
though.
made because it had a clever name, because everything about this to me is awful, and is another example of a film that might have had good intentions, but is so weak in its delivery that it wraps back around into being a conservative horror film in my eyes. Like, even the name itself is almost making fun of people who put an emphasis on
honestly
pronouns.
thought-
It might not be deliberately trying to, but it certainly skirts that line.
That's
It
what
is
I
a
thought,
slasher
though.
film that takes place at a conversion camp and basically does everything that you would expect with that concept. As a queer person, I don't really need the reclamation of gay conversion camps in films and works of horror. It has been a strange recent trend to me. There's been a lot of dramatized conversion camp works in the past decade. I don't really think that we need to depict people going through that.
Why not? Maybe the people making it went to these conversion camps and they're like trying to like represent their, the way that they lived. Like maybe they want to like release this trauma that they had. Maybe they went to conversion camps and they were like, yeah, I want to like make this into I want people to feel the way that I felt when I was here. It's not necessarily that it's like trying to paint gay people like, yes, you can be like, changed. No, I'm almost, if it's a horror movie about being in a conversion, like a gay conversion therapy place, like, yeah, some people went there and had very negative experiences, and so they're relaying that in the sense of a horror movie because it plays on their fears, because they were very uncomfortable at that time. They had fear. They were not treated well. They just had terrible times, and now those people that went to these places can now make movies about it, because now not only is it more culturally viable, or like socially viable, like it won't be looked down upon, but it's also, they've grown up a little bit more and they've gained probably some wealth and experience in making movies that now they can make them, because it's a relatively, not a relatively new thing, but it's relatively new that we are accepting of gay people and or queer people, that they can know that the thought of conversion camps is just insane now.
And then standing up to their own oppressors in that kind of direct way. It worked once in But I'm a Cheerleader, but only by the skin of its camp 90s teeth. It is to me too on the nose as a setting for horror writing. You can build a horror monster that represents hate against gay people that isn't literally depicting the horrible things that have happened to us for decades. To demonstrate my point, I'm talking about metaphors here. If we look at another similar group, I think what Jordan...
Not everything has to be a metaphor, though. If they want to just say it outright, it can be said outright. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean that other people won't like it.
Peele did in Get Out by building metaphor that stands in for different kinds of actions done by white people to and around black people, is far more interesting in its ability to analyze small social actions than if he had just made an outright movie about the Klan or neo-Nazis that was much more direct and heavy-handed in its messaging. The metaphor that he creates builds a distance from the real-life events to where we can talk about these things in a way that just works better most of the time, both in an abstract academic sense but also as entertainment within horror itself. I think if we tried to think about these concepts more abstractly, we could come up with better material than just evil conversion camp man. Even from its base core concept, this is a huge mistake that ends up being the kind of movie that straight people would kind of expect gay people to make and enjoy. It more or less places us in their box, and ends up playing in territories of their language instead of our own, if that makes sense. I think
Not really. I mean, I'm not gay, so maybe I can't say, like, maybe some gay people would want to see that reflected like very literally, in a very literal way. Like, yes, this is what I went through exactly. Like, maybe they don't want a metaphor. Maybe they want people to be like, yes, this is exactly what I felt. This is the fear I felt when I went there. They don't want some metaphor alluding to this where it could be misconstrued as something else. Maybe they want to be very literal. And other people may not want to be so literal. Maybe some people do want that metaphor in order to try and subvert other message, like in like maybe in like put in other messages apart from just the conversion. I don't know, but it's up to the artist what they want to do.
Think a movie like Evil Dead Rise having casual trans mask representation that doesn't even acknowledge it, and just treats it as normal, and even goes so far as to allowing that character to be kind of a bit of an idiot, instead of handling them with kid gloves, does so much more good than the simplicity of a movie that...
I completely agree. When you just have characters existing as they are, like how he said you have a trans mask presenting person, if you just have them exist as a regular human being, as a regular person, I think Owl House did a great job with that. If you guys ever get the chance, please watch Owl House. It's so good. But they had great representation because they treated it as any other relationship, as like normal human beings. People want a normal human connection. When you have these characters that are like, I'm gay and I'm going through all of these terrible things, like it's hard to relate to that because sometimes you just want to feel normal and you want to see yourself in a normal environment. So from that point, I get his I get what he's saying, but other people do want that to see that struggle. So it really depends what side you're on. But personally, I don't like seeing characters, like queer characters, where it's like such a big deal, because I think I could just like feel the connection more and the chemistry more if they were treated as if they were normal human beings with normal human reactions. And even with straight characters, I hate convoluted plots. Like I watched an anime, Kimi no Tomodoke, where the conversations just it didn't feel like a human conversation. It felt like they were trying to create this kind of clash between the two characters, and it was very, very non-genuine, forced. And sometimes that happens a lot with gay characters specifically, because it's hard maybe to introduce them without being like, oh yeah, a lot of straight people might have that issue of like, how do I introduce this gay character, what do I do with this gay character? So they make a clash between the characters, and it's very forced. And it doesn't have to be forced. It can just be like, just pretend it's a dude and write it as a dude and then change the gender. Like, that's it. That's it. It's not that big of a deal. Like, just write it as you would any other romantic story.
Has the obvious message that conversion camps are really bad and shouldn't exist. This one is not a huge offender, obviously, but has somewhat bothered me since it came out, specifically because it was made by Blumhouse, which we will get into here in a bit. It is another example of Jason Blum profiting off of minorities while working against their values simultaneously. And overall, it just feels like the kind of useless statement that a politician would put out that says something that everyone already knows and agrees with, and does absolutely nothing in any radical way like a horror film dealing with these issues should. You also have horror movies that argue that the very act of making horror is a bad thing and should not be done, because of its real harm in the outside world. Which can be done in films that otherwise are good, such as Scream, or can be done very badly in bad movies, like Random Acts of Violence, a 2019 film by Jay Baruchel about a comic book artist named Todd. He has created the #1 selling comic book in America called Slasher Man, which honestly should really tell you about how badly this is going to go if they're trying to pass off that a book called Slasher Man is going to not only sell well, but also outsell the biggest titles from Marvel and DC.
True.
Which, you know, it's ultimately a small thing, but I hate when a film has so little respect for an art form that it is trying to depict, that it doesn't even do basic research on how this fictional work of art would fit within the actual landscape of our world and the industry that they're talking about. Jay Baruchel got relentlessly made fun of online when this came out, because while doing press for it, he was insinuating that this was going to be his big turn into directing full-time, and that most horror movies are bad, and that he was here to make one of the really great ones. And then the film comes out, and
And
it's
it's
just about
not good.
how horror is awful and anyone who likes it is a degenerate. And now, he's hardly worked since then. Basically, the film is about how an obsessive fan begins to kill everyone in Todd's life who is important to him, in ways that characters are brutally killed in Todd's comics, basically arguing that these horrible things that came out of his mind have come back to haunt him, and that the horror community is filled with mentally ill freaks. Todd hates interacting with all of his fans because it disturbs him how much they are into the gross things that he creates. And in general, it is a very dumb business idea to make and then try and sell a movie to a group of people that you are arguing are mentally unwell individuals who are not properly socially adjusted. That seems like a bad move to me.
I get where he's coming from, and I kind of agree to some extent. But also, if you look, I think a movie that did it really, really well, not really well, like, it was actually very disturbing, but, The Human Centipede 2, you have this situation. You have this, main character who, he has some kind of, mental disability. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was Down syndrome or what, but I watched this a long time ago. But he becomes obsessed with the Human Centipede movie, the original, and it's very meta. So it is supposedly taking place within the real world, and you have this fan of this movie, and he becomes absurdly obsessed with it, and it does create horror in the way that, oh my god, like, people like this can exist. And so maybe not showing everyone as complete, like, degenerates for liking horror, but having maybe one person. I'm not saying that the guy in the Human Centipede movie was a degenerate. Like, if you watch the movie, it's just he was not dealt the best hand. Like, he was suffering from a lot of abuse, and I guess he kind of attached himself to the Human Centipede as a form of cope. And it's a really hard movie to watch. I don't really recommend it because it's mentally very draining. But when you look at that and you look at this, like, they're both commentaries on how horror affects people, and you can see that this one person that has gone through an intense amount of trauma latched onto horror because of the trauma that happens in horror. And then here, maybe in this film, you have these people that they just enjoy horror for horror's sake, and it's disturbing because they like that gore and that violence. And there are people like that. There are a lot of people that just straight up like violence. And I guess making a commentary that everyone who likes horror innately just likes violence is not true. So that, I get his point there. But also, just you can make commentary on horror and how horror affects people. Like, that's not a bad thing to do.
And sometimes this happens where a certain movie is done so poorly that we just have to laugh at it. Never Feed the Troll from 2010 is easily one of the most inept horror works ever made, and is also one of the best experiences I've ever had in the theater. And it's a shame that it is basically
This is what gets me. He's making some great points here. He's making, like, there's a lot of things that I just have to say, like, you know what, these are logically sound points. I understand where you're coming from, and your reasoning is sound. But this has only been happening for like a few, like, maybe since here. This whole section is the only section that I think is worth the title and worth the time of even saying. This whole part about the convention did not have to exist. The whole part about AI did not have to exist. That could have been its own thing, its own video. And especially since you say that you're struggling to live, my dude, that you can't pay your rent, I think it would actually be better for you to make smaller tidbits of content, maybe like 20 to 30 minutes of different topics, because you're trying to mush a lot of topics in together, and it's not working, because you have, like, the convention could have been its own thing. The convention with the Wendigoon call out could have been its own video. The AI art could have been its own video. And your response to The Hills Have Eyes could have been its own video. Or maybe, like, combining the convention with The Hills Have Eyes and the Wendigoon, maybe that could have been one video. Because it's kind of discussing the community around horror and why, like, maybe it might not be doing as well as it should. Like maybe the commentary community around horror movies is kind of lacking in some way that you find it. Maybe it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know about a lot about the horror community, but every time I say horror, I think it sounds like I'm saying horror. And I hate that. I'm like, oh my god, I need to enunciate my words. I don't want to be cancelled. I don't want to be taken out of context and clipped. Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna skip ahead. He's just talking about movies, which is fine. He's in like all I can say is like yeah, he's entitled to his opinion for the movies, and that's perfectly fine. Like I think like it's not a bad thing that he's saying these things. Like I may disagree with them. That's fine. But my point is that when he's talking about conservatives not being able to exist or that it's bad that they exist, all you have to say is it's like it's bad and say why it's bad. You don't have to literally say it shouldn't exist. If you explain why it's bad, people will get the point and they'll agree with you more than just saying like if it doesn't exist then like the thoughts will go away. That's not how that works.
First huge boost in subscribers that started my journey that led me to where I am right now. Trust me when I say that it is not normal for your second YouTube video that you ever make to get picked up by the algorithm, or covered in a news site with the devil. I feel like I'm losing my mind seeing the level of this poor little movie towards a film currently in wide release, with distribution on a pretty sizable streamer in a month, because people are saying it sucks that it used AI. Just say you dug the movie, lol. I love and respect all of you, so I'm really not trying to be a dick. I just don't understand being mad at folks not wanting to support it. Cast and crew are paid. It's out there for the rest of the not terminally online to see. I think it's going to be okay. I feel like we give special exemptions for shit we like made by people we like, and I'm not sure I'm into that. Again, I'm not subtweeting any one person. I'm just saying I, Brandon James Strusnick, disagree with the approach, but I'm sure we'll agree on lots of other stuff. As you probably well know, Spyglass Entertainment refused to pay Neve Campbell what she felt like she deserved to return for Scream 6, and as a result, she walked from that project, and did not appear in that film. In her statement, she would publicly say, "As a woman, I have had to work extremely hard in my career to establish my value, especially when it comes to Scream. I felt the offer that was presented to me did not equate the value I have brought to the franchise. It's been a very difficult decision to move on. To all of my Scream fans, I love you. You've always been so incredibly supportive to me. I'm forever grateful to you and what this franchise has given me over the past 25 years. The new star of the series, Melissa Barrera, put out a statement at the time that said, "We are all heartbroken, but we totally understand and respect her decision, and hopefully if we get to make another one, we can have her back." Cut to Scream 7, and Spyglass fired basically their entire cast and crew because Barrera posted something on social media in support of Palestine, which is something that gained a lot of media attention, as you probably well know. Neve Campbell did not pay Barrera the same professional respect, and said nothing publicly in support of her, as far as I can tell. Then, on March 12th, Neve Campbell announced that she was coming back to Scream 7, taking Barrera's job as the lead in that film. I hope that we can all at least agree that this is an objectively wrong thing for her to have done, both to her own legacy as well as to her peers, and that she would have just been better off to let the Scream door shut behind her, and move on to new things while still being loved and remembered fondly.
I mean, she gotta get paid too, though. You know, she gotta get that cash money. So, I mean, if she decides to go back, she probably went back for her own reasons. Maybe you know, it's kind of scummy. Like, okay, someone gets fired for a political opinion. You know, that's really scummy. And then this other person just steps in. Like, I don't think it's her fault. I think it's more on the fault of the producers that decided, like, yes, let's fire this person because I disagree with them, which is not the way it should be. And I don't think that how do I phrase this? I don't think that you think that it's a good idea that people should be fired over their political opinion. But what you're pushing in this entire video is just that, by saying conservatives should not be allowed to voice their opinion because they should get fired and they should not be allowed to do these things. And we should not allow them to do these things. And that's a dangerous thing because people will lose their jobs over being conservative. People will lose their jobs over their own opinion.
And that We also should not financially reward Spyglass by going to see their new Scream film, where they will absolutely...
You are 100% in your right to boycott the movie if you disagree with what happened. If you disagree with what happened, completely avoid the movie, and that's perfectly fine. Like, I support you in doing that if that's what you want to do.
be weaponizing nostalgia and goodwill against you to profit off of this. So in the weeks following, Barrera has since unfollowed Neve Campbell on social media, and it is clear who is deeply in the wrong in this situation. And I want to look at one tweet in particular here that got a lot of attention from the day of this announcement. They came from John Squires, the editor-in-chief for Bloody Disgusting. And I want it to be painfully clear, I am not mad at him, necessarily. I don't like what he said here, I think it's wrong. But everything that we're talking about today is done with the purpose of being constructive and looking at how we discuss these kinds of things. I want us all to do better and to be better as a community, and that is why I'm taking the time to say all of this. Do not go harassing him on my behalf over this. If there's one thing that I want to take away from this video, it is that I do not want to publicly destroy someone with nuclear hellfire anymore just for a single thing that they said that we didn't like, if they have a history of at least trying to have good intentions. One perceived misstep, as long as it is not...
If they have a history of having perceived good intentions. Not... Okay. What?
Fire anymore just for a single thing that they said that we didn't like, if they have a history of at least trying to have good intentions. One perceived...
So Wendigoon, Brandon Buckingham, Oompaville, and all of these creators that you talked about didn't have a history of perceived good intentions. None of them had any proof of any good intentions in the past where you felt that you had to cancel them and expose their asses. I completely disagree. Like, all of these creators have probably done things to do good. Now, do I know them? Not really. I don't really watch any of those people, to be 100% honest with you. But all of these people have probably had something that they've done with good intention. And you just saying that just shows that you didn't look into it at all.
Misstep, as long as it is not, hyper egregious, should not lead to the destruction of someone's professional life. We should be engaging with everything a person has said over their entire career and treating them with empathy. And John is one of the most...
You did not treat the people that you spoke about with empathy at all. At all. No empathy.
Positive constant forces within horror. And I think ultimately he meant well here. I've not said this before, but John is actually arguably the person who gave me my start here with this channel. And he doesn't even really know that, probably. Okay, so my second video that I ever made was that one on Goosebumps and 90s horror media for kids, if you remember. And John actually ran an article about the video on Bloody Disgusting, which got the attention of R.L. Stine, who then soon after tweeted about the video saying that he liked it, which led to me getting my first huge boost in subscribers that started my journey that led me to where I am right now. Trust me when I say that it is not normal.
That is awesome. Congratulations, dude. Great humble
For your
brag.
second YouTube video that you ever make to get picked up by the algorithm, or covered in a news site, or tweeted about by the person that is the focus of that video.
That's wonderful. That's great. Great job.
No, Neve Campbell isn't a bad person because she's taking a deserved paycheck that she spent her whole career earning. Life is complex. 10 things can be true at once. If you're upset at Spyglass, take it out on Spyglass.
Absolutely.
But the problem in this is that the situation actually is quite simple. On one side of the issue, you have people openly supporting a colonialist genocide.
No. Nothing is ever that simple. Nothing is ever black and white, and that's your problem. You see everything black and white, good, bad. Like, if you're good and you're progressive, then what's the opposite of progressives? Conservatives. And so then conservatives are bad. Nuance is everything in life, and if you don't learn to see nuance in the things you talk about, you can never do a proper analysis and proper media analysis. So your issue is you don't know how to see things on a spectrum. And that's how life is. It's either you're saying good things about me or you're saying bad things about me. It's never, I agree with some of the things that you're saying and I respect you, but I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree with what you're saying right now. It's always, you said something bad about me, you think I'm an idiot. Or these are all hate comments because you're disagreeing with what I said. That's not true. And also, nobody is saying that you're a rape apologist or that you're a misogynist. Everyone was saying that your take was bad in the video. Maybe one or two people that are really stupid were saying that, but I read through the beginning comments and most of them were saying that your take was convoluted, that it was not a good take on The Hills Have Eyes, just it didn't make any sense, or that it was not well thought out, specifically the allegory between minorities and the hill people, that it was not well thought out. That's what they were telling you. And you said that those were hate comments, and they were negative, and you laughed about it, basically being like, oh yeah, everything you're saying is just wrong, and I'm right. That's not how that works. People can be wrong and right. And when you have so many Native Americans telling you that your reading is offensive, maybe take that into account. Maybe think about that.
Who are making a movie and a popular horror franchise, who also just got done making a film with Eli Roth, who is a Zionist and an all-around garbage human being. And on the other side, you have people who think this is a problem. Sometimes life is actually quite black and white. Any
No,
underlying shades
it's
of gray
not.
get overshadowed when it comes to things as extreme as what is happening in Palestine. When that many deaths have happened, nuance isn't really allowed. It's one of the few times
We're not talking about Israel-Palestine.
it does make her a bad person. And her
No, she's not a bad person. That's not what makes a good or bad person.
seen with more public legitimacy. If you notice, money is at the root of all of these problems. And the reason that they are able to continue is by people saying that there's no harm in taking that money, no matter where the source of it may be coming from. Because they themselves are not actively holding the gun with their own hand. Neve Campbell is not directly shooting anyone, but is making it painfully clear that she has no issue working with the people who are helping to hold the gun. And has
Okay, no. She did not do anything wrong, right? Her as a person, she did not do anything wrong. If you work for a company because you have no other place to work at, right? If let's say you're an employee at McDonald's, right? Because that's what you my glasses, I swear to God. Let's say you're an employee at McDonald's, right? If McDonald's does shitty things, are the employees liable for what McDonald's does? No. And that's asinine to think that. So it's the same thing with a movie. It's the same thought process, because guess what? It's also a huge corporation. Spyglass is a big corporation, as you're saying, and they employ so many people that it's insane. Why are you shading this one person when there's other actors on the film? Not only other actors, there's other workers on the film. There's producers, directors, lighting people, like tech people, script writers. You're not going to shade them. Are you? Absolutely not. Because they don't deserve it. Because it's not their fault. If the company does stupid things, it's the company's fault. Stop trying to take away blame from the people who actually deserve it and adding blame. Like, if you're throwing blame at her, it's dumb. You need to be redirecting your blame to Spyglass, and you probably are directing it to both. But she doesn't deserve to be shaded on. She's working just like the rest of us.
no respect for any of her peers who were stomped down into the mud for having issues with the gun's presence. And the fact that a lot of horror personalities still embrace Scream 7 after everything that has happened is a clear demonstration of this mental phenomenon of genre fanaticism and money getting in the way of anything that they value in life. Such as horror YouTuber Zach Cherry, who posted about how he got to meet the cast of the upcoming Scream 7, and how he was excited to make content about that. And
What's wrong with meeting the
Design,
cast?
who largely became famous for their Scream fan posters that they made that were so good that they just became actual official posters, which is pretty cool. But they have continued to make posters for Scream 7 to build their online brand, ignoring everything about the ongoing issue. I actually have a lot of respect in this regard to Dead Meat, who are physically in Scream 5 playing themselves, but have come out against the franchise because everything that has gone down. It is not hard to do, and I love that they
It
were among
is
the
when
ones who
your
did the
money
right thing,
is dependent on
even though
it,
they had
because you need
personal
money
and
to live.
professional
When your money is highly dependent on what you're supporting, like this guy making the Scream 7 posters, right? If your money is directly tied to that, it does matter. And it is difficult to do because you have to live. You have to get money, man. If you need to make, like, if you didn't need to make money, okay, yeah, that's different, right? But everybody needs to make money. Everyone needs to live, and there's nothing wrong with making money. Nothing wrong. What is the correct amount of money to make where it's not seen as greedy? There's no line. You can't designate a line, right? So like what's your point, dude?
Ties to the franchise, like Creepy Duck Design, who made the wrong decision. In connection to this, probably one of my
It's not the wrong decision. It's just a decision that you disagree with. Just because you disagree with it doesn't make it wrong. And that's stupid to say so.
my most radical opinions is that the horror community has become way too reliant and cozy with the presence of the funding of Jason Blum's projects, who is probably the single person that I dislike the most within the gravity of horror film culture, when nearly every horror podcast and outlet over the past 6 or 7 years has been sponsored by whatever upcoming Blumhouse movies that are being released. I think that puts us all in a weird situation where this guy is at the center of everything that we do financially. Because he has to me shown through his actions that he actively holds values against what we should be standing for. I'm not trying to call anyone out
Such
in particular
as?
at all, because at this point, it is a very widespread problem. As a community at large, we are way too financially hooked to this guy at a level that frequently makes me very uncomfortable. I immediately question anyone's ethics and legitimacy when I hear them do an ad read for a Blumhouse product. I genuinely can't say
Why?
for sure because I get a lot of emails.
Dude, it's just because they need money. Or like they enjoy Blumhouse products. I don't know what he did that's so bad. So I'm not sure why you're hating. The thing is, you just hate people because of their opinion.
Like this, and honestly, I don't read most of them, but I am 99% sure that I have been offered money by them at several points in the past for an ad read for upcoming films.
Good for
And
you.
essentially,
You should have taken it.
everyone who works in horror has as well, or gifts or what have you, and a great deal of them have accepted that offer. I, as a
My
blanket
God.
rule, have never accepted gifts or a sponsorship for my work, even though I get a constant stream of email offers about them. And if I ever do end up doing one, then I hope you will take that as a sign that I genuinely endorse that company and that product. For the record, I have also never accepted a gift in any form from any company that makes horror media. I think that kind of transparency is important there, and I would always disclose if I accepted something. The most that I have ever accepted is from individual authors working independently who have offered to send me free copies of their books because they like my work. But if I ever thought that taking that would put me in a compromising situation that might stand in the way of my own honesty, I would always say no in every single situation. The only thing I have of value left to me in this
Good for you, dude. Not everybody cares about the same thing you care about. Like if somebody is not in the place to care about Palestine or Israel, like they can't. Sometimes people just can't care about it and they have to put their lives and their family first. And it's somewhat selfish, but sometimes you need to be selfish in life, and that's okay.
world is my writing and my perspective, and I would never do a single thing that compromised that, even if that meant I occasionally had to do something that was not the most socially nice thing to do. If the worst thing that you can come at me with is that I'm not always overwhelmingly nice in every single situation, then I can live with that. Because
It's not that you're not overwhelmingly nice or whatever. It's that you are causing these people to lose their jobs. You're literally you are causing harm to the people that you spoke about, and you are also trying to silence people that are just trying to share their opinion, whether it's negative or whatever you think. Like, you could be wrong. Have you ever thought that you could be wrong? So why are you silent? What makes you the arbiter to say what should be silenced or not silenced when humans are fallible? I can't say I'm right or I'm wrong. I can never say that. Like, I might say it accidentally, like, oh yeah, that's wrong. I could be wrong. You can prove me otherwise. Always, always, and I'll always listen to it. Because guess what? I don't know everything, and you don't know everything. So you can't go out and say, like, I'm trying to silence people. because I disagree with them, or we should silence these people because I disagree with them. That's the whole point. That's why people are upset at you. Because you're trying to silence people that did nothing wrong. You just disagree with them. And you have a very, very black and white point of view. You literally said it yourself. You have a very black and white point of view, and you tend to be more on the black side of the viewpoint. Like, you're negative. You're a negative human being.
There is a difference between kind and nice, and I'd like to think that I deliver on kind where it counts. Most of us who work here for a living have either had contact with Blum or his company, and almost every one of those interactions have been financially motivated. It just all too often to me feels like we have collectively agreed to this deal with the devil, and everyone is kind of afraid to even talk about it or acknowledge that it's a thing, because, to a degree, everyone's hands are kind of dirty from being in the pot. Again, I'm not trying to make accusations against anyone on a personal level. I understand why someone would feel like they needed to take a sponsorship from them. But I hope that after saying this, everyone who is in this position from now on will consider if that money is actually worth it. Because as it stands now, everyone from horror TikTokers and freelance writers on up to the largest horror publications like Fangoria and Bloody Disgusting pose to make a lot of money every single time Blumhouse puts out a large movie. And I'm just...
Well, sometimes those people need that money. And you're just repeating yourself again.
And in my opinion, sometimes they have not been the best about that when it comes to Blum and his movies. I think they often will do great work, and if they hate me after this for saying all of this, that would actually make me tremendously, deeply sad, because all of this comes from a place of love and professional respect for their position within genre history. And I want that all to be said up front. But for the emphasis that they place on gathering people from different backgrounds to show their own perspective, multiple articles on the interior dedicated to that Blumhouse movie. And, we all know that 9 times out of 10, these movies are either going to be garbage or just barely passable. The Blumhouse system of rushing things out the door made for $20 does not produce great work most of the time. To the point where...
That's true. So many Blumhouse movies are just, like, absolute garbage.
They have really started to lose their cultural footing by falling into total self-parody. Like Night Swim, about the haunted swimming...
Yeah, bro. That movie's... I saw the trailer for that movie and I laughed. I was not, felt no fear. Just laughed.
Pool that features a Major League Baseball playing protagonist who is suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease. Out of their movies that have been on the cover of Fangoria, I would argue that Halloween 2018 and Megan are the only ones that are just okay, with the other ones being genuinely outright bad. And as an organization, they should not be stooping to sell their audience on total garbage movies that they know full and well are absolute pieces of shit. We don't need to be giving Blumhouse and their lazy anti-art system this much publicity and attention when there are so many other better and more interesting things made that don't get the mainline spotlight that they deserve. And to their credit, Fangoria does work hard to spotlight smaller films in every single issue. They are among the best at getting people excited for little movies, and I think they should stretch that talent more to really embrace and lift up the smaller side of horror, which has always been our most interesting work, and the backbone of what we all do. To me, I see Blumhouse at their absolute best as the MCU equivalent of horror movies.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people just want trashy horror movies. Like, there's nothing wrong with having that market there. It's also like if it exists, there's probably like a market for it to some extent. Sometimes people want like trashy horror movies to laugh at. There's nothing wrong with that either. It's not bad. Like, yes, the movie itself can be bad, but sometimes bad movies are enjoyable because they're bad. Like Room kind of style. But yeah, at this point Blumhouse just makes garbage movies. Even the FNAF movie was like, kind of iffy.
And I do not mean that as a compliment. I think they are bad for horror. I think they are a bad company that makes mediocre, uninspired, ugly art 9 times out of 10. And when they accidentally let a...
That's your opinion! That is his opinion, and he's, like, free to say it. There's nothing wrong with him saying it.
Good one through the cracks. It almost certainly is not...
If his video was made up of him criticizing Blumhouse for making bad movies, it shouldn't have been called bad conservative movies. It should have just been like bad horror movies. An analysis on bad horror movies. And if he interjected like his politics slightly as into why he believes that, that's fine. But it doesn't have to be bad conservative horror movies. I don't believe that Blumhouse is inherently anything. I don't know, to be honest. I don't think that they're inherently conservative or not. The fuck is that? An ant. An ant on my desk. But yeah, horror is not inherently anything. And I don't like that he started with that. There's some statements that he says that's just complete garbage. But then he has like little things that he says that's like, oh, this makes logical sense. I just think you needed more time on the script and really separate your ideas.
Because they were helping the filmmaker in that process. They famously use market research a ton in deciding the final cuts of their films. And as I've said before, as someone who used to work in film market research before becoming a YouTuber, that process only hurts the work and has, in my opinion, basically never once made a single movie better. They might as well just be hiring a team of carnival psychics to tell them what to do. And I also don't think that just because they are one of the largest public entities of championing horror, that they shouldn't be criticized. In fact, the opposite is true. Their motives absolutely should be evaluated on what they are doing and also what they bring to the table. The
Okay.
business of making movies,
Let's see. Is he still talking
which is
about
what I
Blumhouse?
feel when I watch their work almost across the
He's still talking about Blumhouse. He just stretches things out for so long. I don't know if he has a script. I don't know.
read that it seems that he is implying that he did not care if his employees got COVID because I was to hacky dialogue and art that is not true to the person.
Okay.
Remaking one of the most famous movies of all time about a woman experiencing violence from a powerful man. I probably would have used that as an opportunity to buy myself some public goodwill and hire some women to make that movie. Instead of a male director that was mostly known before this for male-focused stoner comedies, 3 male writers, 15 male producers, 3 male composers, a male cinematographer, a male editor,
Okay,
white people
okay.
or women for behind-the-camera roles on their projects, unless they are already famous and can be leveraged.
I don't know what else to say. Like, I feel like I've just been repeating myself this entire time because the issue is that he repeats himself a lot. Let me just scroll through. Ah, here we go. We just got to the Wendigoon, and I'm not gonna talk about that because it's been talked about so many times already. I think I'm just gonna leave this off by saying that he, if I were to tell him something, if I could tell him anything, I'd tell him, the first thing I would tell him is to examine your biases and make sure that even while you're making these videos, I know you're stating your biases very obviously, but sometimes it can cloud your readings of these media things to the point where it's not the main reading of the film. Like, most people will read the film in a different way than you will because you have a very strong political bias. So making sure that you also take into account the author or the artist's slash director's intention in the film is incredibly helpful to kind of steer you in the right direction. Of course, you can do your own reading, but make sure to like kind of say like, you know, this is the author's intention, but look, there's these sub themes that I found like that could be read from it. But that analogy from The Hills Have Eyes, it was just a bad take. It was just a bad take that maybe if you thought about it a little bit more, I feel like it could have just been a lot stronger because I kind of feel like I know where you were trying to go to by saying that. I think you were trying to say that because it's such an open allegory, like it can literally be whatever you want it to be. It's not necessarily that it is Black and Native Americans, but because it's showing like the difference, like a duality between two people or two kinds of people, you can have this duality be anything, right? I get that reading, but I don't think you explained that. If that is your reading at all, I don't think you explained yourself well in that part. Second, you're a very negative dude, and you need to kind of take a chill pill with the negativity because the amount of times where I see this and you just you assume that people know who you are and that they're thinking negatively of you. That's very paranoid behavior, And I think that if you look within yourself and say, maybe they're not thinking about me. I'm hungry. Maybe they're not thinking about me. Maybe they are, it's not the subtweet might not be about you. Even the other guy thought it was about him. And he's like, no, it's not about anyone specifically. It's just a trend that I've been seeing. And maybe you follow the trend, right? It's not about you. It's not about you. I promise. And if you start thinking that way, I'm starting to get real hungry, y'all. We've been going for almost 3 hours. If you shift your way of thinking that people are not thinking about you, yes, you're a YouTuber and it's hard, but the moment you shift your thinking, like, not everything is about me, nobody cares about me, really, then your life will get so much better. I promise. Like, drop the main character syndrome, and a lot of your problems will go away. Also, please try to engage with other media that you disagree with. You might find, and please, like, drop the politics just for a little bit. Honestly engage with the other media and truly think, okay, why is this really bad? Because you say harm and harm and harm without really ever defining harm. Especially for people who disagree with you, they're not going to understand why it's harmful, because to them it's not harmful. So going in and maybe talking about a little bit, like, how this has led to harm previously, or like examples. And I know you can do the research for that. You've done research for a bunch of other things. But yeah, and your scripts need to change. They need to change. You jump from topic to topic to topic to topic, and some topics go on for way too long, and you repeat yourself multiple times when it doesn't need to be that way. I don't know if you script your things. I suggest writing an outline, a basic outline, and having one point for each thing. It doesn't have to be so long. And honestly, if you make slightly shorter content, it might be more digestible to the general public. So that could help you out in the long run. And separate your thoughts, because you begin talking about the convention. It didn't really fit with the theme of the video. I felt like the latter half of your video was better. I disagree with you on a lot of things, but it is what it is. But I know where your logic is coming from, and you explain your logic generally well. So you have your latter half of the video, which is well thought out and explained, but then the beginning with the AI art and the convention, just they didn't fit. They didn't fit within the rest of the topic, and especially not with your title. So that is my humble advice. I'm not perfect. I will be wrong a lot. So that's just what I think from the little experience I have writing video essays and stuff, and just doing research. I do have a lot of experience with research, so that's my experience with that. And yeah, my dude. I do wish you the best, because I feel like it sucks to be going through what you're going through right now. You're getting lambasted by everybody. So I know you're probably not going to watch this, but for anybody else who sees this, just like, open yourself up to different worldviews and different things. I think that's the best lesson I can end off with. Advice to anybody out, to other people who are watching, is basically just don't close yourself in within your worldview. Make sure that you are able to jump out from your position and kind of look at it from an outside perspective. So that is it, my people. I'm gonna be ending the stream now, and I don't know when I'm gonna stream again. This was really fun. I've had a great past 2 days, so hopefully my new video will be out on, I want to say, Monday. I'm gonna be working on it all of tomorrow and Friday. The script is done. I just need to record it. So I will see you guys then, and if you want to watch any of my other videos, I don't have that many, but you can watch them. So I will see you guys then.